Well, hey, everybody. Well, let me do a special one. Hey, all you cool cats and kittens. It's your pal Jen Lou. Want to give a special shout out to Molson Man for last night covering the Shanda Shearer case. He did an excellent job. Hey, you guys, how's it going? Happy Thursday. It's almost Friday. One more sleep till Ezra. Isn't that sad? That's how I'm thinking about it now. It's not Friday, the weekend's here. Yay. No, it's almost Friday. One more sleep until we hear Ezra testify, even though I literally could have been listening to it this whole time and I haven't. Excuse me. I want to say hi to everybody. Let me say hi. Hey, Dave G. Hey, Heather, whatever. Hey, Tony. Hey, Jackie. Good to see ya. Thumb Thug, welcome. Hello, Tony Enlow. Good to see all you guys. Molson Man. Who else we got in here? See Jackie. Amelia Sparkles. Allie 79. Did I already say Heather whatever? I feel like I did. Well, just in case I didn't. Hey, Heather whatever. Who else? We got Laura. Good to see ya. Oh my gosh. Well, welcome. And let me just say this. I'm glad you decided tonight was your night to speak up. I love it. I love when that happens. Hey, Cement Shoes. Let me see. Who else we got in here? I think I got everybody. I try to get everybody all night. Every night. I don't even know what I'm talking about. Let me tell you what I did today, you guys. Okay, because I care about y'all so much. I sat through some really good testimony for y'all, but I also sat through some really tedious testimony for y'all so that y'all wouldn't have to listen to it, so that I could figure out what is the very best of the forensicking to bring you. And you even are a member too, Laura. Wow. Thank you so much. Wow. We do have a good little community here. I really like it. I'm telling you right now, I don't care. I'll fight anybody in the street. We have the best chat on the YouTubes. Everybody is real chill. Even when they disagree, they're real chill, and I appreciate that. I'm just so glad to see all y'all. Molson, man, you did so good last night. I was so proud of you. I knew you could do it. I had all the faith in the world. I did take a lot of okay. Yes, join in anytime. Say whatever. We don't judge here at the ward. We don't. And what happens on the ward stays on the ward. So I went and I listened to all of the like forensic testing. Okay. And I debated a lot about what. Oh, you're welcome, Molson Man. Hey, Vincent Smith here. Good to see ya. I sure did. I had to. What was I going to do? I needed backup. I did. So, I forgot what I was saying. Oh yeah, the forensics. So I listened to it and there were some parts that were a little confusing. So then I had to rewind. And there were some parts I'm not even going to front. I tuned out a little bit and then I was like, and then I would hear something and I'd be like, oh crap, I missed something. So then I had to rewind. It was a whole thing. But I think I've got some good stuff for you guys. I think this testimony that we're going to play tonight is going to be interesting. So I listened to, hold on, let me do what I need to do to even be able to share screen so I can get there, because I want to like give you guys a synopsis of some of the stuff that I watch, so that you guys don't have to, I mean, you don't have to watch it if you don't want to. I would encourage anybody to watch, just don't be taking my word for it. So I get getting things wrong sometimes. Like my ratio is pretty good as far as right to wrong, but I'm, hello, I'm human. I get stuff wrong. So I listened to, scroll. We listened to Travis yesterday. Oh, I listened to Rich Day's testimony, and he was or is a sergeant. Mainly the purpose of his testimony, he actually didn't do a lot of testifying. Okay. What he did was he was out at the crime scene where the car was, where Ezra's car was. Okay. And he was in charge of securing the scene, right? And then he kept a log of everybody who was at the scene and what they were doing. Okay. And then his other job was he was basically in charge of the storing. He was in charge of keeping track of the evidence. He worked in that capacity, and so that's really what his. Hey, Max 2002, good to see you. Hey, I've learned a lot. So good to see you guys. That was his function. And the testimony, he didn't have a whole lot of testimony. Okay. Basically, what he did for the prosecution is he held up Ezra's clothes. Okay. And then on cross-examination, Mr. Nelson this time did the questioning, but he didn't actually do it wasn't a lot of questioning. Mainly what it was is he would show a picture of the item of clothing on the projector, right? And then it was the sergeant and then another officer, who the other officer held up the clothes, and he had why can't I think of his name? I was just looking at his name. Oh, Rick Day. He had Mr. Day point out the corresponding defects between the picture and the actual item. Okay. And anytime they were doing any describing of various stains and stuff. Hey, chicken lady. Good to see you. Wow. Samantha. Hey, Sam. What are you doing? It's good to see you guys. Cluck, cluck, chicken. Hey, I got a question for you, but not yet, chicken lady, after all this is done. It's nothing important. It's not case related. It's chicken related. Okay. I'm just going to ask it now. I was thinking about this today, and you know how we have, chickens that lay eggs, and we take the eggs and people eat the eggs. Not this people, because I don't care for eggs, but do the chickens, hey, Nacho Mama, do the chickens get upset when the eggs are taken? Like, I feel like they get used to it, because I was talking about this with my husband, and he's like, well, you just throw feed out and they forget they even had the eggs. And I was like, no, I think that's a conditioned behavior. They learn not to care about the eggs. So I want to know if the chickens, the first time they lay the eggs and they're collected, do they get upset when the eggs are taken? That was weighing very heavily on my mind today. And I thought, I thought about messaging you and asking, and then I was like, that's ridiculous, Jen. But this is very fortuitous because here you are. It's like the fates want me to know this answer. Okay. So, that was really the crux of Mr. Day's testimony. He did not really, he couldn't really, I mean, he just didn't. Then the next testimony was Carissa Wobbler. She was a fingerprint and footprint expert, and she testified for the state. Okay. Thank you, Chicken Lady. Thank you. Okay. That's what I thought. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for answering me. Okay. So basically, what she testified to is that she was unable to really get any good. It's not that she couldn't get prints, there were prints, but they didn't have enough ridge detail. And so they really weren't great for analyzing. And the cross examination was Mr. Nelson basically saying that somebody tells you what to swab and what not to swab. And if they don't tell you to swab it, you don't swab it, or do you have discretion? It was pretty much pointless. Okay. Really didn't. I didn't understand the point of it, to be frank with you. Okay. And then we get to Kevin Scott. Kevin Scott works at the crime lab, and he had some very, very interesting things to say. And remember how we were talking about okay, so remember we were talking about like Ezra's wounds on her like thighs and all that in her pelvic area, right? We were talking about that, and I wondered if they could test. Well, they can, and they did. It's not so much his how do I explain this? Okay, so we're going to listen to some of his direct testimony, okay? Because it's like mainly about the knives. There were 1, 2, 3 knives collected from the scene and compared. And the results are interesting. And then but what's to me is actually more interesting is the cross examination. Okay, because during the cross examination they talk about the clothing that was recovered, obviously, but mainly Ezra's, not so much Alex's clothing, because I mean, what was interesting, I'll let you guys, but the clothing part is interesting. And also, the majority of the blood collected from in the car, inside the vehicle, was out of Alex Woodworth's. There was blood that matched Ezra on the outside of the vehicle. And then on that truck trailer, there was blood there. And then there was some blood on the outside, like on the ground, specifically a leaf. But there's like this one part before the actual cross-examination gets underway where the judge is talking, and I almost skipped over it because I thought it was one of those outside of the presence of the juries, but it wasn't. It was actually to the jury. And what the judge said was interesting. And I think you guys should hear it for sure, for sure. And then I hate to tell you guys, but from what I watched today, and I don't feel like there's a whole lot more left. No, there's not. As far as, well, there's one more crime analyst. Huh. Well, maybe we'll go back. But then that's that. I pretty much have watched everything. And there's a couple of friends of that were mutual friends for with Alex and Ezra. We're gonna get to all of it. I mean, I just but I know everybody wants to hear from Ezra. But so far, there's no sign of the yellow cup. I'm very worried for that yellow cup, frankly. Let's see. Oh, and then after that, after the DNA analyst testifies, then there's Aaron Matson, and he's from the state crime lab. And what he did, which I thought was really cool, because I was thinking about this when they were going over the clothing. We're going to have to. We will cement shoes. We're simply going to have a yellow cup. We will. We have to. Yeah, I just, here's the thing about that races footage. Molson man, I appreciate you watching the playback. That was sweet. I know you were busy last night, but I guess I didn't find it particularly helpful in feeling one way or another about anything other than it was sad that it was the last day of Alex's life, right? That's what I felt. That's about it, because whatever exchange that caused Jason to follow Ezra out to Alex's house because of the fire in her eyes, whatever, Jason, weirdo, anyway, was outside. So we didn't even get to see it. Yeah. So annoying. But so when the defense is cross-examining the DNA analyst, right? I was thinking, wouldn't it be something if I could get the pictures of all the clothing and layer them the way that Ezra would have been wearing them? Well, I don't have to, because the guy, Aaron Matson from the state crime lab, he did. And his testimony is only 22 minutes long. And so I'll be watching all of that in its entirety. And then we will, we'll discuss, because there were some parts of this analysts. Why can't I talk today? The analysts, testimony that were a little bit confusing. And then some of it I was curious about, like, and I had nobody to talk about it with because you guys weren't here. And I couldn't, some of the questions, mainly it wasn't really the prosecution. It was really the defense, the cross-examination. It was their questions that were a bit puzzling to me. I was confused why they were asking some of the questions they were asking out of this, out of the analyst. But anyway, let me do what I got to do to share the screen so we can get to that part and you don't have to hear me ramble anymore, because I'm already annoyed with myself for rambling. All right, let me see here. So at the very beginning, the analyst explains, how smart he is and how much schooling he's had and all this, that. I'm only going to play a portion of his direct examination, because Hold on. Because it's really, the direct examination is interesting, but just certain parts of it. The other testimony is what's more interesting. Hold on. This is it right here. All right, hold on. Give me just a second. So I'm going to let you guys hear him testify about the knives that he found and what the results of the various knives were. And then we're going to listen to quite a bit of the cross-examination because that's where all the good stuff is at. So here we go. Ready? Okay, wait. I don't think I added it. Oh, I did. Okay. All right, here we go.
B8. What was B28?
So B28 was a folding knife that stated Wisconsin National Guard, and that was reportedly recovered from the trunk at marker 36.
All right, I'm going to display exhibit 135 here, counsel. All right, so we see marker 36 and a folding knife. What can you tell us about what did you do with that item? This wasn't a swab. You actually received the item itself?
That's correct.
What did you do with that?
So I took a swabbing of the blade of this knife in addition to a swabbing of the handle of the knife. Right. I then tested those swabs for blood, and both of those tests were negative.
So there was no blood on that item?
I reported that blood was not detected on this item.
All right. Then were you able to obtain a DNA profile from, let's start with the blade?
Hey, Sugar Bee, good to see ya. And y'all.
Yes, I obtained a mixture of DNA from at least 2 individuals from the swabbing of the blade of the Wisconsin National Guard folding knife. That
Come on, you
included
guys.
at least one
Go do
low-level male
what?
contributor.
Don't.
In this mixture, I was able to determine a major female contributor.
Hold on
profile,
now. I'm going to have to be talking over this, which is important. Okay. We don't want to be rattling Molson Man's cage, you guys. Don't make him have a conniption. Just please go give me a thumbs up. Okay. So this is a good question, Heather. Remember when Jason testified? Excuse me. Let me use his actual name. Medic Jason Roger, screenshot taker, timeline maker, champion of women, yada, yada, yada. Avid Dungeons and Dragons player. Which I'm not knocking Dungeons and Dragons. I actually like it, but I would not be in his I wouldn't join a campaign with him. And I wouldn't be in his company. Sorry, not sorry. Anyway, I believe that either they're referring to it as National Guard because that's the brand name, or they're referring to it as the National Guard knife because remember Jason gave her his knife. So, yeah. Okay. All right, hang on just a second. I want to rewind this because I want you guys to hear this part because this is important. All right, hold on.
5 here, counsel. All right, so we see marker 36 and a folding knife. What can you tell us about what did you do with that item? This wasn't a swab. You actually received the item itself?
That's correct.
What did you do with that?
So I took a swabbing of the blade of this knife in addition to a swabbing of the handle of the knife. Right. I then tested those swabs for blood, and both of those tests were negative.
So there was no blood on that item?
I reported that blood was not detected on this item.
All right. And were you able to obtain a DNA profile from, let's start with the blade?
Yes, I obtained a mixture of DNA from at least 2 individuals from the swabbing of the blade of the Wisconsin National Guard folding knife. That included at least one low-level male contributor. In this mixture, I was able to determine a major female contributor profile, which is again the DNA profile from that one female individual who contributed the most DNA to the mixture. I then concluded that Ezra McCandless is the source of that major female contributor DNA.
Were you able to find out anything about the minor contributor to that knife?
No, I was unable to make any comparisons to the minor component of this knife.
Why not?
The minor component is too low level for us to make an accurate or reliable comparison.
All right, and you said you also swabbed the handle of that knife, is that correct?
Yes, I did.
And what can you tell us about the swab of the handle of that knife?
So I obtained a mixture of DNA from at least 3 individuals from the swabbing of the handle of the knife. That included at least 1 male contributor. However, I was unable to make any comparisons to this mixture profile.
And why is that?
There's a limited amount of genetic information available, which is just saying that there wasn't enough information there. The data was too low for me to make any reliable comparisons.
All right, let's move on to item B29. What was B29 purportedly?
B29 was another knife. I described it as a serrated steak knife, and it was reportedly recovered from the trunk at marker 37.
All right. So we're showing the item with marker 37. Is that the knife that you obtained and had to work with?
It does appear to be so, yes.
All right.
Is that exhibit number?
That, I'm sorry, is exhibit 134. Thank you, counsel. What can you tell us about what you did with that knife?
So I, again, took a swabbing of the blade and the handle of this knife, two separate swabbings of the blade and the handle. I performed a test for blood, and both of those tests were negative. So I reported that blood was not detected on this item, or on this knife.
And were you able to obtain any usable DNA profiles from either of those swabbings?
No, I was not. There was, due to the lack of DNA detected, so I did not detect enough DNA to warrant further testing. So I did not attempt to obtain DNA profiles from these swabbings.
Let's move on to what is designated as item D, as in dog. What can you tell us about that item?
Item D was a left boot. It was like a leather.
All right, I'm going to skip ahead because that's Alex's boot. But I will say this. When he is doing the comparisons, this is all the clothing, which that's going to be covered in the cross-examination, so there's no need to sit through it twice. But Jason Mengele, his buckle swab, this is what is supposed to be the murder weapon.
All right, go ahead.
But Jason Mengele's, hey, Rubberhead, hold on, let me just push pause. So Jason Mengele is one of the people that they used, that they took a sample from and that they submitted to the crime lab for comparison. So, yeah. And I guess the knife that they just showed was in the trunk and had no blood on it. So I don't know if it was in her. Remember, she keeps a safety kit or whatever in her trunk. Maybe it was part of that. You never know when you're going to need, a knife to, to cut steak, maybe an apple, who knows, rope. Yeah. Okay. Hey, Amelia, we'll just help you feel better, babe. All right. I'm going to play this. All right, here we go.
All right, I've got a laser pointer here for you. It's that button right there. So when you received item O, what did you do first?
Yep, so when I received item O, I examined the item for the presence of any reddish brown staining that may be consistent in appearance with blood. There was nothing obvious on this knife when I received it. There was a large amount of like dried mud or dirt on it. And between that and the color of the knife itself, as you can see, it's a black colored knife. Any reddish brown staining that was on it did not stand out. There were two areas of darker colored staining that I thought may have been reddish brown staining. One would have been up in this area of the knife, and another one was on the other side. So imagine the knife flipped around right near that little, I don't know what you call it, the knob. So what I did when I examined this knife is I took 4 different swabbings. The first one was along the edge of the blade of the knife, so the sharp edge of the blade. The second swabbing was a swabbing of the handle area of the knife. The third swabbing was that area of staining that I observed up along here. And the fourth swabbing was that area of staining right in the joint, but on the blade of the knife.
And let's start with what was the first, I think the first of that swabbing was the edge of the blade
That's
that
correct.
you talked about. What can you tell us about the swabbing that you took from the edge of that blade?
So I took a swabbing of the edge of the blade, trying to obtain any DNA that might be present on the edge of the blade. I took a small portion of that swab and performed a test for blood. This is our confirmatory test for blood, and that test was positive. So I concluded that blood was identified on the EMT folding knife. I then took the remainder of that swab on for DNA analysis, and I obtained a male DNA profile from the swabbing of the edge of the blade. I concluded that Alexander Woodworth is the source of that DNA.
And did you also do you said you did a swab of that area on the side of the blade that we can see that you believed was a reddish brown stain. What can you tell us about that?
Yep, so that stain or that swabbing, I also performed our confirmatory test for blood.
I'm sorry, what is this swab 1, 2,
Sorry,
3, or 4?
So to clarify, anytime we take a swabbing, we give a separate item designation just to keep track of all the swabbings in our reports and notes. The first swabbing was item 01, which was the swabbing of the edge of the blade. The second swabbing that we are referring to now the third swabbing actually is the swabbing of the staining on the blade, which I designated 03, which is that area of darker colored staining that I observed along the edge or the side of the blade closer to the blunt edge. So that 03 swab, I again performed the confirmatory test for blood, and that test was positive. So I concluded that blood was identified on that swab. I then performed our DNA analysis, and I developed a male DNA profile. And I concluded that Alexander Woodworth is the source of that male DNA.
All right, then let's go to swabbing 04. Which swabbing was 04?
Swabbing 04 was that area of staining closer to the joint of the knife near the knob. That swabbing, I also had a positive result on our confirmatory blood test, and I obtained a male DNA profile, and I concluded that Alexander Woodworth is the source of that DNA.
And finally, swabbing 02, is that the handle swabbing?
Yes, so swabbing 02 is the swabbing of the handle of the knife. I also performed the confirmatory test for blood on that swab, and that test was positive. So I identified blood from that 02 swabbing. I then performed our DNA analysis on the 02 swabbing, and I obtained a mixture of DNA from 2 individuals, which includes at least 1 male contributor. I was able to determine a major male contributor, and I concluded that Alexander Woodworth is the source of that major male contributor DNA. In addition, I was also able to determine a partial minor contributor from this profile, which is the profile from the lesser of the two contributors. And I found that that minor contributor profile is consistent with the profile from Ezra McCandless, and I concluded that Ezra McCandless is the source of that minor contributor DNA.
And are you able to tell from your testing, or is it even possible to determine if both of those contributions came from blood or just one of them came from blood? And if so, which one?
No, I am unable to make that determination. When we perform our DNA testing, we would test all DNA that's present on that item, whether it be from blood or skin cells or any other source of DNA. So I can say that blood was present on that swab. I did identify blood. However, I can't make a determination as to which portion of that mixture the blood played a role in.
All right. And blood could play a role in both.
It could.
To be fair, it could play a role in just one.
That's true. Yes.
And we don't know which one.
Correct.
All right. Thank you. Your Honor, I don't know if the court wants to take a break now. I'm about to move on to his next report, November 14th. It may be an appropriate time to take a break since it's 10 after 12 now.
All right, we're waiting on lunch. Ready? Okay, lunch has arrived. So this is a good time to break, ladies and gentlemen. We will reconvene at 1:15 p.m. We'll be in recess. All rise. Okay.
Mr. Scott, I want to move on then to what should be Exhibit 554. Is that your report of November 14th of 2018?
Yes, it is.
All right. Let's talk about a number of those. The first item I want to discuss then would be item that you designate, the crime lab designation of B2.
Okay, guys, don't be mad. I wrote down the timestamps for everything I wanted to play on this one, but then I remembered just now when I was listening to the testimony about the knives that I had a flashback of when I was listening to this earlier in the day. This would be pre-nap, by the way. Lunch provided by Racy's. And so don't be mad, but there's not that much of this part left. And yeah, because there's like 10 minutes, I think, about this report. And the reason I want to go over this report, hey, Anaphylaxis, good to see you. Okay, don't be mad, is because they discuss the results from the fingernails. And that's important. Alex's and Ezra's. And if I open up the transcript, it'll just be a mess. So we only have like 10 minutes more. Please don't be mad because I can't remember where exactly it is because I forgot to write it down when I was watching. I'm very sorry. Don't be mad. All right, here we go. I'll make it fast. How about that? I'll speed it up a little. Okay, here we go.
What was B2?
Item B2 was a swab of a reddish-brown stain, reportedly from the exterior rear driver's side door frame at marker 2.
All right. If we can switch to the computer, this will be Exhibit 96.
Hey,
Counsel.
Nonstop Mom.
All right. So we see marker 2 there. What can you tell us about that swab and what you were able to determine from it?
So the swab, I also performed the presumptive test for the possible presence of blood, and that test was positive. And then attempted to obtain a DNA profile, and I did obtain a male DNA profile, and I concluded that Alexander Woodworth is the source of that DNA.
All right. Evidence, crime lab designation B3. What can you tell us about B3?
B3 was a swab of a reddish-brown stain, reportedly from the trunk at marker 3.
All right. And this will be Exhibit 97, Counsel. All right, so then we have marker 3. up on the screen. What can you tell us about the swab that came from the area of marker 3?
So item B3, I also obtained a positive result for the possible presence of blood. I attempted to obtain a DNA profile, and I did obtain a female DNA profile, and I concluded that Ezra McCandless is the source of that DNA.
And then let's talk about item B10. What can you tell us about item B10?
Item B10 was described as a wad of apparent hairs from the rear driver's side floor at marker 7.
All right, and this is going to be exhibit number 104, council. All right, so we have marker 7 up there. Appears to be a wad of hair there. What can you tell us about that?
So I received this wad of hair. Most of the hairs appeared similar in appearance. They're all like a brown color and a few inches long. I chose 6 of them, basically just plucked 6 of them out to observe them under a stereoscope, which is similar to a microscope. And what I was doing was I was looking for the presence of any root material that might be there.
Why are you looking for root material?
So the type of DNA that we test for is present only in the root material of hairs. It's not present on in the shaft of hairs. So when we analyze hairs, what we want to do is observe root material. If root material is present, then we can attempt to obtain a DNA profile. If there is no root material present, then attempting a DNA profile would not work. So we would not choose those hairs for further analysis.
All right, and what were you able to tell us about that hair?
So I looked at 6 of those hairs. 4 of them appeared to have root material, 2 did not. So I took those 4 with root material, and for DNA analysis, 2 of them did not obtain, or I did not detect enough DNA to warrant further testing on 2 of them. 2 of them did have enough DNA to warrant further testing, so I did attempt to obtain a DNA profile from those 2. I obtained a DNA profile from the same female individual from both of those hairs, and I concluded that Ezra McCandless is the source of the DNA obtained from the cutting of the root material on those 2 hairs.
And from those, are you able to tell us how long those hairs had been in that location?
No, I'm not.
All right, let's move on to item B12. What can you tell us about item B12?
Item B12 was a swab of a reddish brown stain reportedly from the interior rear driver's side door at marker 9.
All right, and this will be exhibit 107, council. All right, so we see marker 9 there. What can you tell us about the swab from marker 9?
So I obtained a positive result for the possible presence of blood from the swab, the B12 swab. I then attempted to obtain a DNA profile, and I developed a male DNA profile, and I concluded that Alexander Woodworth is the source of that DNA.
All right, and then what can the next one we can talk about would be item B13. What can you tell us about B13?
So item B13 is a swab of a reddish brown stain reportedly from the interior rear driver's side door frame at marker 10.
All right, and so we will move to exhibit 109. We see marker 10 there. What can you tell us about B13?
So B13, I obtained a positive result for the possible presence of blood, and I obtained a male DNA profile, and I concluded that Alexander Woodworth is the source of that DNA.
All right. And what about the next one would be B16?
So B16 is a swab of a reddish brown stain reportedly from the back of the driver's seat at marker 13.
All right, so we have exhibit 112 here. What can you tell us about the stain at marker 13?
So B16, I obtained a positive result for the possible presence of blood. I then obtained a male DNA profile and concluded that Alexander Woodworth is the source of that DNA.
And what about then B17?
B17 is a swab of a reddish brown stain on the edge of the seat bottom on the rear driver's side at marker 15.
All right, this will be exhibit 113, council. What can you tell us about the swabbing from the stain there at marker 15?
So I obtained a positive result for the possible presence of blood, and I obtained a male DNA profile, and I concluded that Alexander Woodworth is the source of that DNA.
And the next one will be B18. Where was B18 reportedly from?
B18 was a swab of a reddish brown stain reportedly from the upper interior rear driver's side door frame and marker 16.
All right, so we'll go to Exhibit 114, Council. We see marker 16. What can you tell us about that swabbing?
So item B18, I obtained a positive result for the possible presence of blood, and I developed a male DNA profile and concluded that Alexander Woodworth is the source of that DNA.
And let's go to B24.
So B24 was a canvas painting that was reportedly recovered from the front passenger seat at marker 25.
All right, and we'll do Exhibit 126, Council, showing you, we're now looking at Exhibit 126. Did you actually have the canvas or did you have just a swab?
I had the actual canvas painting
All
itself.
right, and does this appear to be what we see up on the screen, similar to what you saw on the back of that canvas?
It appears to be so.
All right, what did you do with that?
I took a swabbing of a reddish brown stain on the edge of the painting. I obtained a positive result for the possible presence of blood, and
I don't think they'll be trading that art
performed the
after
DNA analysis
this.
on that swab.
Maybe they will. I don't know.
Developing a male
I doubt
DNA
it because they
profile,
keep it.
and I concluded that Alexander Woodworth is the source of that DNA.
Let's move to B27. Where was B27 reportedly from?
All right. I think
B27
because
is a
they're
swab of a
using
reddish brown stain,
pictures,
reportedly from
I
the
think I
upper
can
portion
skip.
of the
Hold on.
driver's
Let me
seat
look.
at
Let me skip. I think I just remember that.
is the source of that minor male contributor DNA.
And again, similar to, I think it was item 8, where you had that mixture that was presumptive for blood. Are you able to determine who is?
Yeah, I think I might be wrong.
Be present on the fingernails.
Oh, no, I'm
Off,
not.
and then-
Here it is.
That's the case, which is which.
Correct.
All right. What about the right-hand fingernail evidence from the defendant?
So
Hold on. I went too far.
Clippings and
All right,
And
here
I
we
concluded
go.
that Alexander Woodworth is the source of that DNA.
So he had a little
we
blood
can turn
outside
screen
of the
off for a
car.
little while. Got a couple other items from that report of November 14th that we're going to talk about. Did you also have
No,
what were reported
external
to be
bleeding.
on left-hand fingernail
Exsanguination.
clippings and swabbings from the defendant, Ezra McCandless?
Yes, I had a number of items that were reportedly recovered from Ezra McCandless. And to clarify, the fingernail evidence from Ezra McCandless was a couple of small swabs that are used to swab around the fingernails.
And did you test any of those items?
Yes, I did.
What did you test?
You mean all of the items from?
Did you test all of the items from the left hand?
Yes. So we received a number of items that were reportedly recovered from Ezra McCandless. One of those items was reportedly left-hand fingernail evidence, which is a couple of swabs reportedly from the left hand. Another item is the right-hand fingernail evidence.
And did you do anything to test the items that, we'll start with the left-hand fingernail evidence from the defendant?
Yes, I did. I performed the presumptive test for the possible presence of blood, and that test was positive. I then attempted to obtain a DNA profile from that left-hand fingernail evidence, and I obtained a mixture of DNA from 2 individuals. One of those individuals contributed the most DNA, and I was able to determine a major female contributor, and I concluded that Ezra McCandless is the source of that major female contributor DNA. I was also able to determine a minor male contributor profile, and I concluded that Alexander Woodworth is the source of that minor male contributor DNA.
And again, similar to, I think it was item 8, where you had that mixture that was presumptive for blood. Are you able to determine whose DNA contributed to the blood versus who's contributed otherwise, or even if they were both blood?
Correct. That's not something that I can determine.
All right. So you don't know if they were both blood or just one was blood and the other was some other form of DNA, and you can't tell if that's the case, which is which.
Correct.
All right. What about the right-hand fingernail evidence from the defendant?
So the right-hand fingernail evidence, I also obtained a positive result for the possible presence of blood, and I attempted to obtain a DNA profile. I did obtain a mixture of DNA from at least 2 individuals, and I was able to determine a major female contributor. I concluded that Ezra McCandless is the source of that major female contributor DNA, Then similarly, I was also able to determine a minor male contributor profile, and I concluded that Alexander Woodworth is the source of that minor contributor DNA.
And finally, as it relates to that report, the last thing I want to talk about is some fingernail washings that were purportedly from Alexander Woodworth. Did you receive those as well?
So I received fingernail clippings reportedly from Alexander Woodworth, one set from the left hand and one set from the right hand. I then took those clippings and I performed a washing of those clippings. So when I say washing, I essentially added these small fingernail fragments to water, attempting to wash any DNA that might be present on the fingernails off, and then I used that washing for our further DNA analysis.
And did you do one for the right and one for the right hand, or one for the left hand? Or did you just do one washing with all of the fingernail clippings?
Yes, I did separate washings, one for the left-hand fingernail clippings and one for the right-hand fingernail clippings.
And were those designated, as I understand it, AE1 and AE2?
That's correct.
All right. And let's talk about AE1. Which hand was that, and what were you able to obtain as far as any results?
So AE1 was the left-hand fingernail clippings. I tested a small portion from that for the possible presence of blood, and I obtained a positive result. I then performed the washing of the clippings, and I attempted to obtain a DNA profile. I did obtain a male DNA profile, and I concluded that Alexander Woodworth is the source of that DNA.
And then how about the clippings from AE2?
And AE2 was the right-hand fingernail clippings, reportedly from Alexander Woodworth. I also performed a presumptive test for the possible presence of blood, and that test was positive. I then also attempted to obtain a DNA profile, and I developed a male DNA profile, and I concluded that Alexander Woodworth is the source of that male DNA.
All right. That will conclude the questions relating to your report from November 14th.
Okay, so this is the part that was confusing to me. So when they did the nail clippings, right, from Alex and from Ezra, which Ezra's is the ones that don't make sense. Alex's makes sense because Alex is the only person who had blood. Did I hear that correctly? That was all his blood on his own hands, right? What didn't make sense to me is that from what they did for Ezra, it was her own blood. She was the major contributor, and Alex was the minor contributor, which I guess I don't understand the I guess I don't understand the results. I don't understand why Ezra would have more of her own DNA under her nails than Alex's, especially if she unalived him in the way that she admits that this is the way she unalived him. What's up for debate is not whether or not she unalived him. What's up for debate is whether or not this was in self-defense. And so I guess I don't understand the breakdown of the major contributor versus the minor contributor. And what I will say is after I heard the testimony about the knives, I started to have a better idea of what happened, I think, because if I remember correctly, when Ezra was interviewed at the hospital, right, she said that she grabbed the knife. And it's very unclear from that interview that she gave if because she did say that well, she didn't actually say this during that interview. I think this is part of her defense. So the allegation is that the cuts on her thighs and her groin area came from like knife play or whatever, or what do they call it? Edge play, something like that, whatever. I don't know. But whatever they call that. And, but she talks about a singular knife, not multiple knives. And it seems to me from the way that the DNA results came out is that she cut herself with what they refer to as the National Guard knife, doing all of the cuts, meaning her everything that happened to Ezra on her body happened with that knife, with the cuts on the insides of the thighs and in her groin area and in on her stomach, and then the carving of the boy. And then but maybe now that I think about it, if that's the thing that she did second, then I guess it would make sense that she would have more of her own DNA than his. You know what I mean? Because it drips, and she might have wiped it on stuff. And then we know that at some point, I see. So it would make sense that if that's the last thing she did, she would have more of her own DNA than she would have Alex's DNA. So now it's all making sense. But I think that she unalived him with one knife, and she inflicted the wounds on her. Hey, Kezchik. And she inflicted that's what I'm thinking, Heather, whatever. Anyway, she inflicted the wounds to herself with the National Guard knife, and then the other knife, the longer, bigger knife, was the knife that she used only on Alex. So the next part that we're going to hear, and we'll probably maybe skip a little bit because it does get a little tedious, the back and forth with the cross-examination. But one thing I did want to say is that after all of the is it after them? Hold on, let me look. Because I feel like it's somewhere in between, I feel like is the right answer. But so remember when we were watching at the very beginning of the trial, and there was that letter that was discussed, and they were going to have a whole, situation outside of the presence of the jury about that, blah, 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 right? Well, before all of the DNA and stuff, where is it? I just saw it. There are mutual friends of Alex and Ezra's that testify. And I think we should probably hear that because it's Jenna Van de Zand and Court Fox. So I'm thinking that they are the people. I think Jenna is the person that letter was to, and that they couldn't talk about because because they couldn't talk about it because you can't testify to something that wasn't told to you. And since she would have been the person that the letter was intended for, I don't know if they're ever going to get to the contents of the letter or whatever, but yeah. So the next part we're going to hear is the cross-examination of the DNA analyst, because all of this came before, like we skipped way ahead, instead of listening to all the crime stuff, because that was kind of in the beginning. And then that Jason is sort of at the end of the whole situation. In fact, Jason testifies. Hold on, let me look at this. Then Jason testifies, and then it's the lead investigator, and there's another crime analyst too that testifies. I didn't see that when I was skipping through. Huh. Okay. We'll try to hold on. I got to make sure I share my screen. I'll skip around on this. Hey, Angry Mimi. So we can, in the interest of time, because I want you guys to be able to hear all of the the interesting parts of the crime, the DNA and stuff. Okay, I wasn't quite ready, so I don't know why it did that. All right, here we go.
55, which is that your report from December 18th of 2018?
Yes, it is.
All right.
All right, this is more testimony about the blood that was found in the vehicle. And let me just say, there was a significant amount of blood found in the vehicle. And, oh wait, this is where I want to be. And it belonged to Alex. So I think these are things that we need to keep in the back of our mind, which I find interesting that all this is going to come out, and then Ezra's going to get to testify, because if I remember correctly, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong,
Result of the testing that you
but when she spoke to the detectives at the hospital after they found Alex, so the 24th, because the incident took place March 22nd, and it was 24 hours. So it was the 23rd when they found Alex. And then on the 24th, that's when they came and interviewed Ezra again. So correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounded like when she was talking to them that they were outside of the vehicle. I can't figure out where all this chasing went happened. If all of his blood is inside of the vehicle, and it is in the front, it is in the back, it is on door panels inside, it is on the floorboards, it is on I don't know what you call that part of the car where the door closes, but it's at the bottom. You know what I'm talking about? Not like inside of the car, but not underneath the door. But when you open your door and you go to step in, right there, whatever that part of the vehicle is called, there was blood there. And I don't understand where all this running took place. You know what I mean? I don't know. Some of this stuff is just like, her story just does not make sense at all. Oh, I didn't know you were a Wildcats fan. Go Wildcats. U of A, go Wildcats. But yeah, the door jam. Thank you, Recliner Detective. The door jam. I thought it had a fancier name. My bad. It's not as exciting as I thought it was going to be. It's kind of a letdown that that's what it's called. But yeah, that's the thing, is that the way that she made it sound is that she did what she did. She got him off of her, right? And she was just stabbing him everywhere, but he kept coming at her. I mean, we're not talking about, this isn't a limousine, all right? So this back seat area, front seat area, none of that is huge. I like jam. I just thought that it was going to have a fancier name. Like, I don't know why I thought that, but it doesn't. That's the part of the story that's not adding up. And I feel like this is probably why the jury reached the, well, I thought about that too, Heather, whatever, but we're going to get to that part. So yeah, I just thought it was going to have a fancier name. Okay. So now this part is important. So I want you guys to listen to this part.
did in this case.
Yes, they are.
Thank you. I don't have any other questions for Mr. Scott. Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, before we do cross-examination, or not before we have cross-examination, and I'm just going to back up a little bit.
Thank you,
I told
Vincent's
you,
missing ear.
from the beginning that you can only decide this case based upon the evidence, but I don't think we've actually told you, or that I haven't told you, what evidence is. So first of all, evidence is the sworn testimony of witnesses received at trial. It's also exhibits received by the court at trial. But it also can include stipulations between the parties, and it can include judicially noticed facts. So at this point in time, I'm going to tell you about two stipulations and a judicially noticed fact that will be part of the evidentiary record in this case. So I'll read the stipulation reached between the parties, that parties being the state of Wisconsin and the defendant, Ezra McCandless. It is hereby stipulated by the parties that items W3A, W9A, and W10A, which consist of cervical swabs, external genital swabs, and mons pubis swabs collected from Ms. McCandless were tested by the state crime lab and did not produce scientifically usable evidence in this matter. Okay, so that stipulation you can consider to be evidence. Now, the second stipulation is that Alexander Woodworth was right-handed. Okay, that's number 2. Number 3, the judicially noticed fact the court has taken judicial notice of, and that is that the formula for converting kilograms to pounds is to multiply the kilograms by 2.2. And those are, again, will be evidence in the record. Now, at this point, Mr. Nelson, would you like to go ahead with cross-examination?
Yes, thank you. Mr. Stone, I want to ask you some questions that the state didn't ask you about. To begin with, in report number.
Okay, so did you guys catch that? So basically, her SANE kit came back with nothing. Isn't that something? Well, to be fair, she didn't actually take my advice because we've watched stuff out of order. And this is the ensemble that I refer to as How to Wear a Blazer 11 Billion Ways, featuring Ezra McCandless. And this is the hairdo that I so fondly remembered to, I referred to as the Swiss Miss Hot Cocoa girl hairdo. Looking a little, because she's got the, yeah, that's what's happening here. Where she's gone Swiss Miss. It's some sort of, somewhere between Swiss Miss and like a Who. The Who from Whoville's, not the Who the group, but the Who from Whoville. They always had, all the women had like, hey Momo, had braids on some level. So yeah, this is the Swiss Miss Who from Whoville bootleg Great Value brand Princess Leia hybrid. That's what we're gonna call it. Okay. All right. So here we go. I just wanted you guys to make sure to catch that that her SANE exam came back negative. All right. Here we go.
Number 13.
Let me see.
That's your report dated November 14, 2008, which is exhibit 554. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. On that report, you tested an item documented as W12. Is that right?
That's correct.
And W12 was a swab that had been given to you.
Kezchik, at this point, I regret to inform you that the yellow cup has not been mentioned, nor has it been located. So, Cement Shoes has decided that we should have the ward, what do you call that? FAM cup. The official ward cup is going to be yellow with Ezra's face on it. What is it again? Type it again, Cement Shoes, that Ezra says give it back, or I want this back. I don't even know if I could do the braid that she's got going, but my hair is all one length. So I couldn't do those curls on the side. And I don't have bangs. I can't wear bangs because I have a calic. So, and I have a small face, and bangs don't look good on me. So, yeah, I regret to inform you there will be no bangs and there'll be no yellow cup. We just have to have one of an official Ward Fam cup. If Cement Shoes is in here, he'll tell us what it was that it's supposed to have written on it. I could scroll back up, I think. All right, I'm going to play this. So, okay, here we go.
or that had been included in a forensic kit that was provided to your lab, correct?
That's correct.
And the swab, according to the forensic kit, was a swab of Ms. McCandless's right upper thigh. Is that right?
Pay
That's correct.
attention to this
And you
part.
were then
This
able to take that
important.
swab
Let
and
me,
do DNA
hold on.
testing for that, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And you were able to determine this, again, the presumptive positive for blood.
Hold on. I'm
that
going to rewind it
swab.
just a
Agree?
little bit. As I want you guys to hear this. Okay.
Tested an item documented as W12. Is that right?
That's correct.
And W12 was a swab that had been given to you, or that had been included in a forensic kit that was provided to your lab, correct?
That's correct.
And the swab, according to the forensic kit, was a swab of Ms. McCandless's right upper thigh. Is that right?
That's correct.
And you were then able to take that swab and do DNA testing for that, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And you were able to determine this, again, the presumptive positive for blood on that swab. Agreed?
That's correct.
And that there were, well, let me get to your report to make sure. It's on page 6, I believe. It's on both page 6 and on page 8. And on page 6, you say there is a single source female profile that is Ezra McCandless. Is that right?
Yes, so from the right upper thigh swabs, I developed a female profile, and I concluded that Ezra McCandless is the source of that female profile.
So you agree with my question that I asked.
Yes,
And then on page 8, you did additional testing of that swab. Is that right?
that's correct.
And you did that under what's called a YSTR profile. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
And you found that that was consistent with the profile from Alexander Woodworth. Is that right?
Yes, so to explain this a little bit more, when we talk about DNA analysis, we actually have two different forms of DNA analysis that we can perform. The kind of DNA analysis that we have talked about throughout the entirety of my testimony up till now has been referred to as autosomal STR analysis, which is DNA from anybody, from males and females. In addition, we have a form of DNA analysis that we refer to as YSTR analysis, which only looks at DNA located on the Y chromosome. Females will have 2 X chromosomes, males will have an X and a Y chromosome. So by using this YSTR analysis, we can hopefully produce a YSTR profile, which is a profile developed from only DNA located on the Y chromosome. So this YSTR analysis essentially ignores any female DNA in a sample and will only test any male DNA that might be present. So in samples that have a large amount of female DNA and a relatively small amount of female DNA, if we attempt to obtain an autosomal profile, we might only obtain the DNA profile from that female individual, which was the case in this sample. However, part of our analysis is to test how much male DNA is also in a sample. Since I did detect male DNA in the sample, in addition to that female DNA, I also performed this YSTR testing. Now, YSTRs are a little different than autosomal analysis in the sense that YSTR profiles are not unique. Different males can share the same YSTR profile, and I would expect any paternally related male relatives, so any male relatives that share a father-son relationship, should also share the same Y profile. Now, for these right upper thigh swabs, I did attempt this YSTR analysis, and I did obtain a YSTR profile, and I found that that YSTR profile is consistent with the profile from Alexander Woodworth. And then, similar to any other evidentiary profile that I develop, I perform a statistical analysis on that YSTR profile. And essentially, we would not expect to observe this YSTR profile more frequently than approximately 1 in every 1,773 individuals in the U.S. population.
So you agree with my initial question? It's consistent with Alexander Woodworth, correct?
The male DNA is, yes.
And just like similar to some of the other results that you've indicated, when there's a positive possible presumptive blood, and you have two DNA sources, you can't say whether one contributed DNA and another contributed blood DNA and the other one contributed touch DNA. Agreed?
Correct. I don't know what the source of the DNA would be from.
Or you don't know if it's both are contributing blood DNA.
Correct. I don't know that.
And that W12 that we just talked about was the swab from Ms. McCandless's skin on her leg, according to the information that you were provided in this commonly called SANE kit. Is that right?
That's a common term for the kit, yes. The information provided on this sample was that it was collected from the right upper thigh, and that's all I know.
And you've also talked to us about testing that you've done of the genes that were presented to you. Is that right?
Yes, I was.
Okay. And now you took, you did notes for all of these tests to show in particular where you tested. Is that right?
That's correct.
So let's just talk about the genes to begin with, since we're on that.
I don't have, I'm fine with, Your Honor, probably have him just look at it as long as he identifies it, which I'm sure he will. I don't have a problem with it just being admitted and published.
Okay, and do we have an exhibit number yet?
Working on it, Judge.
Okay.
Counsel, what page again was that from there? Just about that. Okay, thank you.
Sir, I'm showing you what's been marked Exhibit 656A, which corresponds with Crime Lab page 70. Is that right?
I believe the 70 would be an annotation made by one of you guys, but I would refer to this as page 18 of 312.
But the page that's printed here says Crime Lab page 70. Agreed?
Yes, that is on the sheet of paper.
And then on 656B, it says Crime Lab 71, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Which is 19 of 312 on your annotation, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
You've seen these before.
Yes, it is a copy of my case notes.
You made these notes, is that right?
That's correct.
Move for the admission of Exhibit 656A and B.
No objection.
All right, exhibit 656A and B are received.
Permission to publish.
You may.
Showing you what's been marked as 656A. These are your notes, is that right, sir?
Yes, these are notes that I put together. I should note that these are not photographs that I took, though.
Mr. Mattson from your office took these photos?
I believe so, yes.
And then you worked with him to mark in particular where you took the samples, is that right?
Yes, I just got a copy of his photos and I put my own annotations on it.
We see here in the middle of the page, it says M1 stain. Am I pointing to that correctly?
That's correct.
And that points to an arrow which represents the area on the genes where you took the
I'd watch too, Laura.
sample to test. Is that right?
That's correct.
And that's on the left side of the jeans as the person is wearing it, correct?
That's correct.
Somewhere, if not exactly, on the seam, very near the seam on the side of the pants. Agreed?
Yes, that's correct.
At about hand length down if somebody's wearing that. Agreed?
I'm going to go
I
ahead
don't
and
know
speed them
how
up
long
because now
the
that we've been
individual
listening to it
question's hands are,
sped
but
up,
it's
it
about
sounds weird to
third
me
to
to hear it
halfway down
normal.
the
So
jeans.
please hold.
Middle of the thigh there, correct? As far as vertical.
Somewhere around there, yeah.
All right. And that result, I believe you previously testified, came back presumptive for blood and identified as Ms. McCandless. Is that right? I believe that was M1, which you'd said was a mixture of at least one low-level contributor with a female major being Ezra, correct?
Yes, that's correct. Ezra McCandless was the source of the major female contributor DNA.
And then you did if you turn it over and we look at 656B, do you see that on the screen?
Yes,
And that is, again, we see what you indicated is M2 stain, is that right?
that's correct.
And that points to the area again where you tested the M2, is that correct?
That's correct.
And that came back presumptive blood for Alex, is that right?
That's correct.
And then we have M3, which you previously identified, and I'm marking that here on the screen, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
And again, that came back presumptive blood, both Alex and Ezra, is that right?
Yes, that was a mixture of DNA in which Alexander Woodworth and Ezra McCandless are both included as possible contributors to that mixture.
I believe your testimony was multiple areas, you simply chose a representative sampling of the genes in general, correct?
Correct, yes.
It was your choice whether you wanted to test other areas of that gene or whether you didn't, is that right?
That's correct.
So the fact that there is not a test near any of the frayed defects, when I say near, I mean like on the actual defect of the genes, that was your choice, agreed?
Well, Judge, I guess I'm going to object.
I'll rephrase.
This characterizes the testimony, seeing as how the M2 stain is right next to a defect. So
I'll rephrase. You chose to take the samples where you did, correct?
That's correct.
You saw that there were at least 3 defects to the genes, correct?
That's correct.
Which we can call holes, agreed?
That's correct.
And the holes have edges, agreed?
Yes,
And you would have been able to test the actual edge of any of those holes, agreed?
that's possible, yes.
And you chose not to do so, agreed?
Correct. That was not a form of analysis that I performed.
See, now I found this part interesting because I would have liked to have seen a sample from one of the defects. And the reason I'd like to see a sample from one of the defects is that I'd like to see if it is a mixture of blood. Because if Ezra did what I suspect that she did, which was to use one knife to unalive Alex and one knife to inflict the injuries on herself, right? Which is also, I think, what the prosecution's theory is, although this is where it gets a little sticky and kind of complicated because the analysis of DNA is limited to that DNA is there, not the source of the DNA. And so it could be DNA from any number of things, which is why the one knife, I think it's the unaliving knife, the one that was used on Alex, is a mixture of 3 people's DNA. One of them female and one of them male. And if I remember correctly, the unaliving knife came from Ezra's dad. So I feel like I wonder who the third contributor is. But the thing is that he couldn't separate it out because there wasn't enough of a sample. And so it's interesting to me what they can do, but what they're still limited on doing, which I just thought I think he did bring up an interesting point. You know, it would have been good just to have one area, but I can see why he also focused on the areas that he did, because those were the areas that had the most blood. So, yeah. I just thought that was interesting. And I thought it was a good point on the part of the defense attorney to bring that up, because it was that is interesting. It's a valid point. Okay, here we go.
And there was some leggings. Did you ever see some leggings in this case?
I don't believe so.
Showing you what's been previously marked and admitted into evidence as Exhibit 569. You ever seen this article of clothing before?
No, I don't believe I examined that.
I don't
Okay,
think
that's
Kevin drinks the
was
Racy's
not
coffee,
requested for
because
DNA
I don't know
analysis,
if
as
you
far as I'm
guys
aware.
noticed this.
So you've never seen it?
I mean,
never had the
Ezra's
opportunity to
pretty
test it,
young,
agreed?
so she's
That's
going to
correct.
still
And that's
look
based upon
young.
what the
But I
prosecution-
do notice that
your
the
testimony based
people
on what
who
the
be
prosecution
drinking
team
the
provides to you, agreed?
That's correct.
Racy's coffee age like milk. I'm just saying.
You testified about, well, let me ask you about some other items. Showing you it's been previously marked as Exhibit 639 and admitted into evidence. That appears to be a t-shirt, agreed?
That's correct.
Is that ever presented to you by the prosecution team for your testing?
No, I did not examine the shirt.
So you don't even know if there's any reddish brown stains on there that would be possible to be tested?
I did not examine the shirt.
Showing you what's been marked as Exhibit 640. You seen that shirt before?
No, I did not.
You were not presented by the prosecution team with this blue button-up shirt with white spots on it?
No, I did not examine that.
So you didn't have the opportunity to test any of the reddish-brown stains anywhere if there are on that shirt, agreed?
Correct, I did not examine the shirt.
So without your examination, it'd be hard to know whether A, that's blood, and B, whose blood it is, right?
I did not examine the shirt, correct.
He's answered you
Showing
3
what's been marked as
times.
Exhibit 619.
Oh, he gave
appear
a
to be a
little
gold sweater.
sass at the end. Did y'all catch that?
At least a sweater, regardless of the color.
Yeah, it looks like some sort of sweater.
It appears to be a defect where it's cut, torn, ripped in half.
That's correct.
You ever seen that sweater?
No, I have not.
Did the prosecution team present that to you in any way or talk to you about that in any way?
No, I'm not aware of that sweater. I did not examine it.
So you don't know if there's any reddish brown stains on that sweater that would even be possible to test?
No, I did not examine that.
You did examine this blue flannel shirt you talked about, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
And that's the shirt
Hold
that
on,
you've
you want me to
taken,
rewind it real quick?
4 different.
It's not that
samples
big of
is
a
that right?
deal.
That's
Just
correct.
hold
This is a
on.
crime lab
I'll
item.
rewind it a little bit and then I'll put it back.
640. You seen that shirt before?
No, I did not.
You were not presented by the prosecution team with this blue button-up shirt with white spots on it?
No, I did not examine that.
So you didn't have the opportunity to test any of the reddish brown stains anywhere if there are on that shirt, agreed?
Correct, I did not examine the shirt.
So without your examination, it'd be hard to know whether A, that's blood, and B, whose blood it is, right?
I did not
Here
examine
it
the shirt.
comes.
And showing you what's been marked as Exhibit 619,
See?
that appeared to be a gold sweater.
Look how petty I
sweater.
am. I hope I never change. Okay, here we go. Oh, wait.
Blue flannel shirt you talked about, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
And that's the shirt that you'd taken 4 different samples of, is that right?
That's correct. This is a crime lab item L.
Welcome back. I've learned a lot.
If you just want to move them, I will stipulate to them.
Move for the admission of 657, 658, 659.
I believe I saw his grandmother and his mother in the
Exhibits,
courtroom a couple of
67,
times because I
658,
think they were
659, and
released from their
660 are
subpoenas.
received into evidence, and you may publish.
Showing you what's been marked as Exhibit 660. You see the sticker number on there?
Yes.
And does that appear to be page 15 of 312 of your notes?
Yes, it does.
And this is the same blue flannel that I just had shown up there previously, correct?
Yes.
And on here, you've got your notes where you label exactly where it is that you did the swabbings. Is that correct?
That's correct.
On the top portion of it, we see L1 stain. Is that right?
That's correct.
And that points to the arrow where you took the L1 stain. Agreed?
That's correct.
And then on the, just to take it in order, and then showing you what's been marked as 659. That's page 16 of 312 of your notes. Is that right?
That's correct.
That's the same blue shirt. Is that right?
Golly.
That's correct. With the
I'm
front
just glad
tilted
that you guys
And
appreciate
that
it.
has, marked on there where you've got L2 swabbing. Is that right?
up. That's correct.
And that's to indicate that it's on the inside of the flannel shirt. Is that right?
That's correct.
Similar to like if I pulled my suit coat open, it'd be on the inside of my suit coat, correct?
That's correct.
And that's where you did sample L2.
Yes, that's correct.
And then back to Exhibit 660, in the bottom left-hand corner, we see stain L3. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct on the right sleeve.
And I didn't
And then
understand why he was asking these at
That's
first,
on the
but
outside
then
of the right sleeve.
it
did you
makes
say?
sense later.
Yes, the stain that I targeted when I swabbed was on the right sleeve.
Okay. And then L4 is in the bottom right-hand corner as we're looking at this Exhibit 660. Is that right?
That's correct on the cuff of the left sleeve.
That's where stain L4 was, correct?
That's correct.
And the results on
Oh,
all
thank
L1,
you,
2, 3, and 4 were
Tony.
presumptive
Thank
for blood,
you,
right?
Heather.
correct.
And
I
if they
love
were
you guys. You guys
for Ezra McCandless.
are
Is that
just
correct?
the best.
Correct.
And then the exact swabbings here that you had, I want to show you Exhibit 657, which is, that appear to be a picture of the.
The
groups
judge
that you
gets a
tested for
little
item
crunk
D.
after a minute.
That's correct.
He does
Says up on the
get
top there, item D, you see
persnickety
that?
because he gets
Yes,
tired of
appears to
Mr.
be a photo of the
Nelson.
left boot crime lab item D.
And the part where you swabbed was this, what appears to be this reddish brown discoloration that is in a roughly vertical up and
Hey,
down.
Aussie
stain.
girl Jen,
that's
we were
correct.
just
And that's
talking
where you
about you.
swabbed,
I wasn't. It was
for
really because
What's been
shit,
called
keep an eye
D2,
on
is that
her.
right?
Yes, that's correct.
And that came back presumptive for blood, being Alex's blood, agreed?
To clarify, that was a confirmed blood. So blood was identified on that swab. Sorry, I confirmed the present blood. So blood was identified on that swab. And yes, it was. I did conclude that Alexander Woodworth was the source of that DNA.
And then showing you what's been marked as 658. That's item E, is that correct?
Thank you, Laura.
Yes, that's correct.
That's the other boot, the right boot?
You guys are
correct.
so
And that
sweet.
shows here on the top, the D2 swabbing that you did as well, correct?
The E2 swabbing, yes.
Yes, thank you for the E2 swabbing. And again, that was confirmed blood, correct?
That's correct.
And confirmed, and that it was Alex Woodworth's.
Correct. I concluded that Alexander Woodworth was the source of that DNA.
Now, you are not able to tell timing of when the DNA was, for lack of a better term, placed there or landed there or got there. Agreed?
That's correct. I can only analyze the evidence as I receive it. I have no way of knowing how long the DNA had been present on that item before I received it.
And I want to go through with you.
Oh, thank you, Jackie. You guys are just the best.
There would be better quality if we do it from the computer.
I appreciate it, but I'll just make do. Thank you.
You see?
So I'm showing you what's been marked as Exhibit 72. Do you see some evidence markers there?
Did you guys hear that? The little exchange between the district attorney or the prosecuting attorney and the defense attorney. He said there's a little bit better quality if we use it on the computer. And the defense attorney said, "This is I'll do it. I'll do it this way, but thank you." They're tired of each other already. Yeah, this is sad. This is sad. But I do want to hear you guys. I do want you guys. This is why I wanted to do it in. Thank you, Vincent's missing ear. This is why I wanted you guys to hear the cross-examination, because the direct is really not. I mean, it's just him saying this, the evidence, this shirt and this is the sample and yada, yada, yada. And it's kind of dry, but on cross, he has to go in a little bit deeper and explain a little bit more. So I just, I feel like it's funner it's better this way, not funner. This isn't fun. I mean, it is kind of fun, but you know what I'm saying? It's more interesting is what I should say. They've been doing it off and on during the whole trial. There's another point where it comes out too at the end of this. They really go, not like they go at it lawyer style. You know what I'm saying? They're not like, nobody takes out their hoops or anything. All right, here we go. Not like Attorney Vera. I'm going to have to object. All right, here we go.
Yes.
And you would previously testified about item.
Oh, there was
Yeah.
a Wayne's World. Let me check that out.
Trying to find the right report here. June 15,
Oh, I see.
2018, report
Well
number
played,
9,
Heather.
you tested item F, is that right?
I do
That's
love a
correct.
movie
And item
reference.
F
You guys
was
know that.
Marker 9, is that right?
If I remember correctly, yes.
Do you need to check your notes?
That would be helpful.
Sure, go ahead.
You see? Snark.
Do you have a copy of the reports there, or do you need to?
I did not put the marker number into my report for items D through O.
Okay,
But I did record in my notes what the packaging had stated.
sure.
Your Honor, to speed things up, I would agree that item F was marker 9. That's fine.
Did y'all see the size of that binder? Holy moly.
I just show them my copy of Exhibit 556. Leave it on. Sure, that's fine. Okay. Showing you my copy of
Now
Exhibit
that's a
556.
binder.
That might refresh your memory. According to Exhibit 556 is again marker 9, item F. Is that right?
Yes, so marker 9 is described as a reddish brown stain on grass at marker 9 on this in the sheet.
According to your results, that turned up presumptive positive for blood, and that it was Alex, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And then 10 and 11 that we see on this photo, those were each the cigarettes. Is that right? If you look at Exhibit 556 to refresh your memory.
Yes, 10 and 11 were the cigarette butts.
And the cigarette butts.
Sorry,
were
Nonstop
not
Mom.
presumptive for blood. Agreed?
Correct. I did not test those for the possible presence of blood.
You tested
I'll be quiet.
the ends of those cigarettes, correct?
That's correct.
And they came back to be Alex Woodworth's DNA at 10 and 11. Agreed?
Yes, one was a single source sample, and I concluded that Alexander Woodworth was the source of that DNA. The other was a mixture in which I concluded that Alexander Woodworth was the source of the major contributor DNA.
Then in this photo, can you see Exhibit 12 up there, or excuse me, marker 12 where I'm pointing?
Yes, I see marker 12.
And you can also see it in Exhibit 83. You see marker 12?
Yes,
That's the same marker 12 that I'm pointing to here with my pointer. Is that right?
it would appear to be so.
And according to Exhibit 556, marker 12 is item 5, is that right?
Yes, that looks to be so.
And that, again, was a presumptive positive for
Good,
blood,
because I
correct?
wasn't
That's right.
actually going to
And
be
that it
quiet.
was Alex Woodworth's blood, is that correct?
I obtained that
Aw,
proactively that
thank
Alexander
you, Sam.
Woodworth was the source of the DNA that I detected from that.
And then showing you what's been marked as Exhibit 88. You see marker 15 there?
Yes, I do.
And that appears to be in a position near the front
Thanks,
tire. Agreed?
babe. I appreciate it.
That appears to be so. I should clarify that I was never at the scene and probably haven't seen these photographs before either.
And marker, or item V in your report was a reddish brown stain on a leaf at marker 15, is that
You
right?
go night-night, Sam. Sweet dreams, babe.
Yes, that appears to be so.
And again, that was tested positive, presumptive for blood, correct?
That's correct.
And that was Alexander Woodworth's, was the source of that DNA, agreed?
That's correct.
So I just wanted to answer. I've learned a lot's question really quick. She did have a few, they were described as superficial and more like scrapes. So, yeah. No, it's the yellow marker nonstop, Mom. Believe me, every time there was a flash of yellow on my screen, I looked. Is that the cup? Nope. It's a marker. Lame. All right, here we go.
So according to your results, the source of the DNA at 9, 10, 11, 12, and 15 were all Alexander Woodworth, agreed?
I believe so, yes.
And then you asked many questions about the inside of the vehicle, is that right?
About swabs I received from the inside, yes.
Correct. And including B11, which was at marker 8 on the inside rear door of the vehicle.
Which exhibit are we at here, Council?
Sure, I apologize. Exhibit 107.
So, thank you. That's fine.
I don't think you can see it because of the glare.
Do you want it here, Council?
Thank you.
See it better?
That's marker number 8.
Hold on. I just wanted to say something really quick about those. Oh, thank you, Kezchik. So sweet of you guys. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. I wanted to say something about the lack of cuts to Ezra's fingers or anything like that. I will look for them. Anaphylaxis. I don't. There aren't very many photos that were shown in open. I mean, there were, but there weren't. But I'll find them and I will put something together. So it was more like a scrape, like if you tripped and fell on cement and you put your hands out in front of you to stop, and it was only on one hand. But I think that the reason that she didn't have the cuts like people would expect is because of the type of knife that she was using. And that's just what I think. I think that knife had a decent grip on it, for lack of a better word. And I think that's why. So, because she did say that she grabbed the knife from Alex, which resulted in, this is what the detective said who saw the, oh, welcome, Jackie. Thank you for joining membership. Welcome to the Fall Club. Thank you, Heather, whatever. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. It is anaphylaxis, and I'm thinking that, but anyway, she said that she grabbed the knife, and that's what cut her hand. But it is described by everybody who's testified about that cut as very, very as superficial, almost more like a scratch. So I'm wondering if she had something on her hands to keep it from slipping. And it couldn't have been latex gloves, because ask Nicholas, go to John. That does not help the blood from slipping. All right, here, that doesn't keep it from slipping. All right, here we go.
Showing you in exhibit 107, agreed?
That's correct.
Marker number 8 was again B11,
Yes, that's correct.
and that was tested presumptive for blood, correct?
That's correct.
And that was Ezra McCandless is the source of that blood, correct?
No, for item B11, we had a mixture of DNA, and Alexander Woodworth and Ezra McCandless are both included as possible contributors to that mixture.
Okay. And then I'm going to show you pictures just We have item 9 we can see in there, correct?
That's correct.
And then if you look at this photo, we can see maybe
What exhibit number? are we
sure,
on?
exhibit 106. I'm going to show it to you here. You can see exhibit or marker 12, 13, 18, and 15 in that photo. Is that right?
I believe so. It's a little hard to pick the numbers out.
Now that you saw it, I want to post it on here, exhibit 106. Again, markers 12, 13, 18, and 15. Those are the 4 markers I asked you about, correct?
I believe so.
And those 4 markers again showed the presumptive presence of blood, and your testing indicated that the source of that DNA was Alexander Woodworth, correct?
We're gonna have to take those one by one.
Sure. So I believe,
Also, I want to say
asked
that
about marker 12, that's B15,
That's correct.
and that was Alexander Woodworth is the source of that.
That's correct.
And I asked you about marker
let me push
13,
pause.
that's B.
I just want to say that even though Kevin Scott, the DNA analyst, is clearly ditching biology class, as Molson Man pointed out, to be here to testify on this day, I think that he does an excellent job of testifying. I think the defense attorney does try to get him rattled a few times. And like right now, he tried to get him to answer about 4 different markers and give an answer for one answer for 4 different markers, and he didn't do it. And I thought that was really clever of him and well played. Well played, Kevin Scott, DNA analyst. Well played. Here we go.
16 from report 13. And that's Alexander Woodworth is the source of that.
Sorry, what's the marker?
Marker 13, item B16 from report 13, exhibit 554.
Yes, that's correct.
And then marker 18 on report number 14, item B20.
Hey, Tracy Walker. Good to
that was
see
Alexander
ya.
Woodworth is the source of that DNA, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And then marker 15 on report number 13, exhibit 554, item B17. That was Alexander Woodworth, correct?
Oh my goodness. Thank you. I've learned a lot. You
Yes, that's correct.
guys.
So just again, we went a little quickly.
I
but wanna-
appreciate that so much.
12
Thank
were
you.
on the back of the seat, 13's on the back of the seat, 18's on the back of the seat, and 15's on the rear passenger seat. That's what we just went through. Agreed?
I believe so. It's a little hard to keep the markers and the primary item number straight.
And then there's some other markers throughout the back seat of the vehicle that we can just see here along the back seat as well as on the other door. Is that right?
That looks to be so.
Okay.
I could go for a cherry one, but Jen's off the snacks.
B21 is marker 21. Is that from the
Sure.
middle of the seat according to your notes?
I
I
do
have the
want a
passenger
snack.
side rear seat bottom.
Okay. Where my marker is pointing to now, in that vicinity.
I was not present when they collected the swabs.
But that's consistent with what you have written in your report, correct? In this area.
Yes, the passenger side rear seat bottom.
And again, that's the source of that DNA was Alexander Woodworth.
Yes, that's correct.
And then you testified about a bunch of testing around the entryway to that rear driver's seat, kind of the frame around on the top of it as well as on the inside. Is that right?
I believe so.
And on those, so again, I can pull out some other pictures, but as you see here, the frame of this area, both on the bottom, on the side, and then if we extend it across the top, correct?
I wouldn't know. I was not present when the samples were collected.
Okay.
Like he's told you
But
4
those-
times.
The source of those, the DNA at those places was again Alexander Woodworth.
I mean, we would have to take it one by one again.
Okay.
Well, I also don't have any Jolly Ranchers, so
Marker 16, item
I'll have to
B18,
get some.
the upper interior rear side driver door. The source of that is Alexander
I
Woodworth.
love Jolly Ranchers. They're my fave. One of my faves, but cherry sours are
Yes,
my
that's correct.
absolute fave.
And then we have scale B1, B7, B8, and B9, which are swabs in that same area for items B30, 33, 34, and 35. I know I'm chunking these if that's okay. Those are all along again that door frame. Top to
Ooh,
bottom side
yum.
here.
That sounds good too,
Yeah, it's
Nonstop
indeed.
Mom.
I believe so.
And those all come back as the source of that DNA is Alexander Woodworth, correct?
Well, B34 did not have enough DNA to warrant further testing. 30, 33, and 35, I concluded that Alexander Woodworth is the source of those 3.
So based upon your testing, we know that Alexander Woodworth's DNA is outside the vehicle as at the markers previously indicated in Exhibit 72, 9, 10, 11, 12,
Oh my gosh.
and 15. Is that right? We just went through that.
I believe so, yes.
And that Alexander Woodworth is the source of much of the DNA at the around the frame going into the vehicle, correct?
I believe so.
And that Alexander Woodworth is the source of the DNA inside in the back seat of the vehicle as well, correct?
Out of many of the samples I tested, yes.
In fact, I believe the samples that you
Cherry
tested
and
regarding
then watermelon.
the car, there was marker.
Oh, wait,
1,
I
which was on
lied.
the outside rear of the vehicle.
Lemon is my favorite, then cherry, then
Item
watermelon.
B1.
I don't get Jolly
That's the
Ranchers very
outside of
often.
the
It's
rear
been a minute.
driver's side door. And that tested presumptive positive for blood, and that was Ezra McCandless, correct?
That's correct.
And then item inside the car, item 8, which we previously saw the picture of, that was the source of that DNA was both Ezra McCandless and Alexander Woodward, correct?
Yes, they're both included as possible contributors to that mixture.
And then you had, and I don't think I have a picture of it up here, but you had item 3, which was on.
Yes, it's
sorry,
candy,
marker
hard
3, which
candy.
is item B3.
It's
the
really
swab of the
good,
brown stain on
Tracy
the trunk.
Walker. You got
That
it.
came back to be presumptive blood, the source of that DNA being Ezra McCandless, correct?
What, Molson man? What kind of
right.
childhood did
So
you
aside from those
have?
3 that I just mentioned, the items that you tested inside or on the vehicle came back to be Alexander Woodworth as a source of the DNA when you were able to determine a source, correct?
For the swabs that I received, I believe so.
I used to rely on my kids' trick-or-treat bags as my source for Jolly Ranchers, but I don't have any kids that trick-or-treat anymore.
You talked a little bit about DNA trace evidence. You know
So
what
now
that
I
is,
have
correct?
no, I'd have. Thank
You know what
you,
DNA trace evidence is?
Jackie.
Yep,
So
so,
sweet
well,
of you.
do
I
you know what it is? To
To
appreciate
clarify, we
that
do
so
have a
much.
trace unit
Thank
in the lab,
you.
and this trace unit deals with non-DNA related things. So can you clarify what you mean by trace?
I believe I asked you before, you can determine the source of DNA from fluids from a person, correct?
That's correct.
From touch DNA, which would be skin cells that are transferred, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And in this case, were you provided any swabs taken, that were asking you to search for touch DNA?
I don't recall if I received any swabs looking for touch DNA. I did receive a number of items which I swabbed for touch DNA.
Which items did you swab for touch DNA?
Let me take a drink first, man. You've been badgering me with,
Well,
peppering me with
the knives I
questions.
swabbed. And then the item B4 jacket or the coat that was recovered from the vehicle. So the interior cuff area looking for touch DNA.
Uh-oh.
Were you provided any swabs regarding touch DNA in the front of the vehicle, on the steering wheel, dash, center console?
I should.
Anything in the front area of the vehicle regarding touch DNA?
I have a
Regarding
confession to
touch,
make
I don't
after
believe
this.
so. There were swabs of reddish brown staining from that area, if I remember correctly.
Okay, there was the swab of the reddish brown stain from the front of the steering wheel, correct?
That's correct.
And then from the, if someone were sitting in that position behind the right shoulder in the driver's front seat, correct?
Could you clarify which
I
item?
believe it's item 33 or marker 33, B27, the upper portion of the driver's seat at marker 33.
Yes, item B27 was a swab from the upper portion of the driver's seat at marker 33.
Those are the items, and then you had the painting, which I believe was marker 25, B24, that was in the front seat as well, correct?
That's correct.
That was the limit of the things that the items that you tested, whether they be swabs or actual material from the front seat, agreed?
If you could give me a second to
Sure.
read through all these.
I think, yes. I think he's sweating
I
a
believe
little.
That's correct.
And just to follow up on the touch DNA, I believe your testimony was touch DNA is DNA left behind on an object from skin cells after handled by a subject, agreed?
That's what we commonly refer to touch DNA as. Correct.
And sometimes you're able to obtain a swab that collects that touch DNA, and sometimes you're not, correct?
Could you clarify?
Sure. Like if I touch this microphone and you came and swabbed it, it may or it may not come back with my DNA, correct?
Correct.
It depends on different factors, agreed?
That's correct.
And I believe you said the 3 factors would be the length of the contact, agreed?
There's probably more than 3 factors, but yes, the 3 that I referred to.
You referred to 3, correct?
That's correct.
And the 3 that you referred to was 1, the length of the contact, correct?
Correct.
Environmental conditions, correct?
Correct.
Obviously, if something is on the inside where they're not in contact with rain, snow, or weather, that's probably less of a concern, agreed?
I would agree.
And then it depends upon the person who's doing the touching or the leaving of the DNA, correct?
That's correct.
Some people just leave more DNA than others, agreed?
That's true.
And on this case, you were able to obtain DNA from
I wonder
markers 10 and 11. which
if
were
I'm one of
cigarettes that
those
were found
people
at the scene, is
that
that right?
leaves a lot of DNA or not very much DNA.
Yes, that's correct.
And that was not tested for blood, agreed?
Correct.
So you don't know whether that DNA was from touch DNA or from some other source, agreed?
Correct. It didn't look like reddish brown staining that would be consistent with blood, so it wasn't an item that I tested for blood. But I agree that I don't know what the source of the DNA is on those items.
But it was Alexander Woodward's DNA, correct?
Correct.
And it would certainly be consistent with somebody who has a cigarette and smokes that cigarette and puts their fingers and hands on that cigarette, correct?
Correct.
Could also, obviously, if they put that cigarette in their mouth, come from fluid from their mouth.
That's correct.
Could be either of those, correct?
Yeah, it could be from any source of DNA. That's correct.
All right. The tests that you talked about here in your reports, you had Exhibit 339, which is Report 9. That's from June 15th of 2018. Is that right?
That's correct.
And then you had Exhibit 555, which was Report number 4. Excuse me, let me go before that. Exhibit 554, which is Report number 13, dated November 14th of 2018. Is that right?
That's correct.
Let me hit the Googles. I can assure you there is a lemon Jolly Rancher. Please hold.
That's correct.
Those are the 3 reports that you did, correct?
That's correct.
Based upon the 3 submissions that were given to you, correct?
That's correct.
All in 2018, correct?
That's correct.
No additional submissions have been given to your lab that you're aware of in 2019 at all, correct?
Not for DNA analysis. There might have been another submission for a different unit, but that's correct for DNA analysis.
If there were going to be some requests for more DNA submissions, it would go through you, right?
I would hope so.
You're the one that's been working on it already, correct?
That's correct.
That would certainly be the policy of your office is, hey, Mr. Scott's already working on it, let's push these through to him, correct?
Typically what we do, yes.
Uh-oh, was a little skippy.
You use the term consistent with in some of your reports, is that right?
That's correct.
There's different terms that sometimes you use in your work. It's sometimes you use the term consistent with, agreed?
That's correct.
Sometimes you can exclude somebody, correct?
That's correct.
And sometimes you can match, I think, is that the term that you would use? Is there something more positive than consistent with?
Well, we would generally refer to a complete match, like you phrased it, as we would refer to it as a source statement. So when I've been saying that so-and-so is the source of any in particular DNA profile, I guess that would be the match that you termed.
Okay, and so source statement match mean the same thing, at least for today, between the two of us, you would agree?
Yes, that's correct.
And those are the 3 standards as far as opinions that you give, agreed?
Occasionally we can give an inconclusive opinion, but yes, those are the 3 typical ones that we run into.
Okay, and there's a reason that sometimes you don't do the match and you just say something is consistent with, correct?
That's correct.
Because it is, as the phrase speaks for itself, consistent with could mean lots of things might be consistent with it, agreed? We'll get into the math for yours, but just in general, the phrase consistent with means more than one might be consistent with it.
I guess I'm an objector, Your Honor. It calls for speculation, and whether it means the same thing for him as it means for somebody else is pure speculation.
I didn't say it. I'm asking you questions. I'm not asking you to reply to anybody
Well,
else.
if he wants to know what consistent with means for him, that's fine, but not to generalize it to other people what they mean by consistent with.
And it has
Why
begun.
don't you just rephrase the question?
You use the term consistent with in your profession, agreed?
I do, yes.
And you consider yourself a scientist, agreed?
I am.
And it's the term that you use when you use the term consistent with is what you hope is within that scientific community, correct?
I guess I'm going to object that asked it to be more clarified. Is he talking about DNA scientists, or is he talking about scientists in general? And if this witness even knows what
Look at your
scientists in
screen,
general
Mo.
means, I'd like it to be more clarified.
Well, I'll sustain that. I guess you have to.
I rest
what
my
this witness-
case.
what he
No
believes
further
consistent.
questions, Your Honor.
You use the term consistent, correct?
That's correct.
What do you use it? Why do you use it? What does it mean?
So anytime I make a comparison between a standard profile from a known individual and an item of evidence, if we find that we have a single source comparison and that the evidentiary profile, I guess as you would say, matches the standard that we're comparing to, if the standard and the evidence matches, we would that means that each of the locations that we're testing for have the same numbers, essentially the same number of repeats that we're testing for in our DNA analysis. So if each of those are the same, we would say that these 2 profiles are consistent. And then to go a step further, if we perform that statistical analysis and it's more rare than 1 in 7 trillion, we would just say that that person is the source of that profile. Whereas if we don't have that particular level of strength, or if it doesn't meet 1 in 7 trillion, instead of saying that they're the source, we'll say that this profile is consistent with the standard.
So when you lack the, for lack of a better term, the confidence to say something's a match, you use the term consistent with. Is that fair? And I know it's not just confidence in it, you're just winging it. It just meant when you lack the scientific confidence to match something, then you use the term consistent with in your practice. Agreed?
I would say that's fair, yes.
But there's also times when you, on the other side of it, you can exclude.
Good night,
certain options.
Nonstop Mom.
That's correct.
See you
Alright.
tomorrow. Remember,
You
day
also
1 of
did some
Ezra
swabbings of
Palooza
the
begins tomorrow
knife in this case,
night.
Is that right?
That's correct.
So, okay, thank you.
Showing you what's been marked as exhibit 661. Can you tell us what that is?
Your Honor, we'd agree to its admission and publication.
All right, you offering 661?
Yes, please.
All right, exhibit 661 will be received and you may publish.
What is that?
So exhibit 661 is a copy of my case notes for item O, the knife.
You previously testified about your taking different swabbings.
Hang on just a
of
second
item
and
O,
I'll
the knife.
answer.
That's correct.
Okay, so Other types of DNA would be like mitochondrial DNA, which is the kind of DNA that's in hair. Then there's the other DNA that they just talked about with the thigh, the skin from Ezra's thigh, where they swabbed that, and I didn't mean to unhide that. Crap! Now I can't find it. So there's different sources of DNA, but there's also different kind of types of DNA. There's that SRA, I think is what he said. They're going to go back over it on redirect. It's going to be a whole big thing. And Kevin Scott's going to break it down for you, Allie. Okay, here we go.
I believe you said you took 4 swabbings, is that right?
That's correct.
And you labeled those 4 swabbings where they were in particular here on exhibit 661, is that right?
The 03 and 04 swabbings are labeled on this, yes.
And the 03 swabbing is written in this area here that I'm highlighting, agreed?
That's correct.
And that's on the left picture of the knife on the upper portion of the knife on the, on the thicker side rather than the blade or the edge side, agreed?
That's correct.
Maybe I'll write her, Kezchik, and ask her, Dear Ezra, where is the yellow cup? Sincerely, Jen Lu.
So on the 03 swabbing on the side of the knife, that came back as Alex Woodworth is the source of that DNA, agreed?
That's correct.
And then this photo also shows 04, you said, is that correct?
That's correct.
And that is this area that I'm pointing to here, is that correct?
In that general area, yes.
Okay.
There was some staining right around that little knob.
I mean,
That
that's
is again
certainly
The
possible.
source of that DNA was Alexander Woodworth, correct?
That's correct.
And then you.
Thank you, Vincent. Missing ear.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
Did you take a photo like you did of this one? I wasn't able to find it. Is there a photo of where you took the swabbing of 01?
No, I don't believe I made a label for that one. That's just along the sharp edge of the blade.
Can you just show us where that is here, pointer, what you mean by the sharp edge of the blade? I think it's a red dot.
Yeah, so the sharp edge of the blade, like all along here.
Okay, so.
I
on
don't
the-
even see what he's pointing to.
On the left picture, you took the swabbing of the farthest to the left of that, and on the right picture, to the farthest to the right of the edge of the blade is what you're
I
saying,
think
correct?
your
That's correct.
laser pointer's
From
broken,
tip down to the
sir.
handle.
I believe so, yes.
Okay. And on that, on 01, the edge of the blade, the source of that is Alexander Woodworth, correct?
I'm going to write to
That's
her
correct.
for you,
And then also
Kezchik. Don't you
took a
worry.
sample of the handle,
I'm going to be
agreed?
the best
That's
pen
correct.
pal
Do you
Ezra
know-
ever had
just
until
in
I
general
get
on
my
the handle, was there
answer
any place in
about that
particular
yellow
you
cup.
recall?
Yeah, so when I swab smooth surfaces like that handle of like the handle of this knife, I typically want to try and preserve that item for any future fingerprint analysis. So in the event that somebody would want this knife analyzed for fingerprints, I avoided swabbing any smooth surfaces. So when I took the swabbing, it was mostly along the edge.
Why don't you show us again?
Sure, so it's mostly along like the edge of the knife. It's like along here, and then probably like the edge of this clip thing, and
Oh, I
And
guess
any
we'll
place
just
that,
use our
fingerprints would not
imaginations to
show up.
figure out what he's
Okay, do you know if
talking
there was-
about.
Let me back up for a second. Do you know if there was a
Cameraman, thanks.
fingerprint analysis of that done?
I'm not aware of one if there was.
And the swabbing of the handle came back with 2 different sources.
That's
is that
all
correct?
right, Ezra.
Correct. I had a mixture of DNA from 2 individuals.
And the mixture of those 2 individuals was from Alexander Woodworth and Ezra McCandless, is that right?
That's correct.
And I think as you previously stated, because it came back presumptive of blood, is that right?
This one was a confirmed blood.
Confirmed blood. But the fact that there's 2 sources of that DNA, you're not able to say whether Alexander Woodworth was the source of the blood or Ezra McCandless was the source of the blood or both of them are the source of the blood, agreed?
Correct. That's not something that I can determine.
So that finding would be consistent with Ezra McCandless's being the source of the blood and Alexander Woodworth's DNA being from touch DNA, agreed?
That is not something that I can determine.
Okay, that's consistent with that based upon your findings, right? One, you can't determine it, but it's consistent with that, agreed?
I mean, it could be any situation. One could be blood, one could be skin, both could be blood. It's not something that I could make any sort of statement on.
And so what you're saying is it's consistent with one of
I'm
the.
going to object. It's been asked and answered. He said he can't answer it, and
Thank you.
he's given his best answer that he can give. It's been asked and answered.
Sustained.
Fair to say, based upon the test.
Look
that
at
you've
Heather's
done,
profile
you can't
picture.
Rule out that Alexander Woodward handled that. Agreed?
That isn't something I can make a statement on.
Those are the only questions I have.
Right, any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor, thank you. I want to start out talking about item W12, which is in Exhibit 554, your November report.
Okay, I'm going to change the speed on this one just a little bit because this is the this W12 that they're talking about is a sample, is a swabbing from the skin of Ezra's upper right thigh, I believe. And they're going to argue about this for a minute. There's going to be some objections. It's going to be a whole thing, but it's kind of interesting. And let me know what you guys think. If you guys aren't feeling it, just write it in the chat and I'll turn it off. But this part is interesting to me, but you know how I am. I like the minute details because I'm like that. All right, here we go.
So I understand it correctly. You did both autosomal DNA analysis on that and YSTR analysis. Is that right?
To clarify, you said W12?
Yes, W12.
Yes, that's correct. I
All right.
performed both forms of analysis.
All right. And the autosomal DNA, in other words, the full DNA profile was the defendant, correct?
Yes, I concluded that Ezra McCandless was the source of that DNA.
And then there was some YSTR that you were able to separate out, correct?
That's correct. I did develop a YSTR profile.
All right. And if I understand it correctly, YSTR is just the DNA that's found on the Y chromosome, correct?
That's correct.
All right. And just so that it's clear and so we understand each other, W12 was the swab of the right thigh of the defendant, correct?
That's correct. It was the right upper thigh from Ezra McCandless.
All right. And with YSTR, for example, you would expect that I would have the exact same YSTR as my two brothers, my father, my paternal grandfather, and on up the line, correct?
Barring some sort of mutational event, but yes, I would expect that.
All right. And if I had a son, it would be the same as a son of mine would have, again, barring any mutational changes.
That's correct.
All right. And you, similar to the analysis of the autosomal DNA, you come up with a statistical calculation for YSTR, correct?
That's correct.
All right. What is the statistical calculation for YSTR with the profile that you developed for males in the United States?
We would not expect to observe this profile more frequently than approximately 1 in every 1,773 individuals in the U.S. population.
All right. And that compares to, I think the lowest of the autosomal DNA ones that you had was 1 in 9 point some million.
It was somewhere around there. Yeah.
All right. And as far as Caucasian males, what would be the statistical calculation for that YSTR profile for Caucasian males?
So to clarify this a little bit, when we performed this statistical analysis on the YSTR profile, we break it down into different racial groups, and these statistics are heavily dependent on how many profiles are in this database that we're using to calculate this. So essentially, what we're doing is we take this evidentiary YSTR profile that we have and search it against 5,305 profiles that are in this database, and we found that this profile occurred 0 times. So we did not observe this particular profile in the database that we use. So using the U.S. population, we would not expect to observe this profile more frequently than 1 in every 1,773. Since there are fewer Caucasians in the database, this number is going to be lower. We would not expect to observe this profile more frequently than 1 in every 499 individuals in the Caucasian population.
For DNA results, those are not very conclusive results, are they?
Objection. This is the form of it.
I'll rephrase it, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Can you tell us how discriminating those results are compared to your typical DNA results.
Objection, form of the question, vague as to the use of the word discriminatory.
I'm sorry, Mr. Nelson, I couldn't hear. the full-
Objection as to form, also vague as to the use of the word discriminatory.
No, you can answer. If you can.
Yes, so typically the goal is to develop an autosomal profile, because autosomal profiles, which are the DNA profiles from both males or females, are much more discriminating in the sense that most people have a unique profile with the exception of identical twins. With YSTR profiles, these are not as discriminating because different unrelated male individuals can share the same Y profile. And as we discussed, paternally related male individuals should share the same Y profile as well.
And Mr. Scott, are you aware if, does the crime lab only test items that are submitted by law enforcement or prosecutors?
That is typically the most common form of evidence submission. However, there is a like a defense by court order type situation in which a court can order the lab to test items, and that does occur every so often.
And those would be items submitted by the defense.
Objection.
Objection is sustained.
You were asked some questions about cigarette butts. And which part of the cigarette butt do you typically test when you receive a cigarette butt for testing?
Yeah, so typically when we receive a cigarette butt, the question is who was smoking it. We test the area around the very end of the cigarette butt, the filter paper that covers that area, or the area that would most likely be in somebody's mouth.
All right. And I think you talked about buccal swabs. Essentially, a buccal swab is taking, what is it taking? What are you getting with a buccal swab?
We're intending to get like cells from the inside of your cheek.
All right. And is that typically from something like saliva?
Objection beyond the scope of my cross.
I don't believe it is, Your Honor.
Overruled. You can answer if you can.
Yes, I would expect there to be saliva in a buccal swab.
And is that the same type of thing you would expect to see on a cigarette butt?
I'd imagine anything in your mouth could have saliva on it.
I do not have any other questions for Mr. Scott.
Right, any recross?
Yes. Mr. Scott, I want to follow up on some questions you asked about the item W12. Do you remember that?
Yes, the right upper thigh swabs.
That's the right upper thigh swabs from the same kit exam. Is that right?
That's correct.
And that's where you talked about the YSTR profile. Agreed?
That's correct.
And a YSTR profile is a valid DNA profile, correct?
Yes, it is.
You rely upon those profiles in your work all the time, correct?
That's correct.
It's just like all of your other opinions, it's scientifically reliable, and that's why you offer it, correct?
That's correct.
And in fact, the profile on the W12 was consistent with Alexander Woodward, correct?
That's correct.
You were provided with 3 male standard samples, correct?
That's correct.
And the other 2 male standards you excluded, correct?
That's correct.
But Alexander Woodward was not excluded, was he?
That's correct.
His profile was a profile consistent with Alex Woodward, correct?
Yes, the YSTR profile from the right upper swabs was consistent with a profile from Alexander Woodward.
Now, the questions that the state asked you about this YSTR, that was all regarding W12, correct?
That's correct.
The source of the DNA on the knife handle at 03, that wasn't YSTR, was it?
No,
I didn't ask about that. So I did not ask about the knife in my redirect. However, if the court wants to allow him to go beyond the scope, as long as I have the ability to do some additional redirect afterwards, I don't have an objection. Otherwise, I would have an objection.
All right, tell you what, hold on, just hang on. All right, I'm going to let you go with this, Mr. Nelson, and then I'm going to give Mr. Dufour an additional second redirect on that issue, because it is beyond the scope of redirect.
That's fine, then I'll just leave it as is. Thank you, Judge.
All right. Okay, it's, well, I guess first of all, Mr. Scott, I think you're free to go. I'm assuming
Yes.
you're free to go. So have a safe trip back to Madison. You can step down and have a good day. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to take an afternoon break here. We're gonna break for 15 minutes. It may get a little longer. There are a few things that we have to address, but we'll try and be as quick as we can. So, all rise. Okay, do we, by the way, did we ever locate the missing exhibits? Okay, and what are those numbers?
I think the clerk has them. I don't know them off the top of my head, but I will continue to look.
All right, well, just a housekeeping matter. We need to either replace those exhibits. And again, Mr. Nelson, if you could please put your microphone on. I just want to go back to this.
Okay,
because-
I'm about to turn this off. Give me
Just
just a second. I'm all tangled up. Hold on. Okay. So I thought that was interesting testimony. This one, though, is better because where is he? He is going to he made okay, so he is like the crime scene. He's the crime scene photographer, okay, and he took pictures of the crime, but he also took pictures of all the evidence, including the oh, she did. I'm sorry that Henlu chooses violence on the daily. I don't know where she gets it from. She's she's a bit of a bully, and Henlu is out of control. She really is. She's just not to be fucked with. Okay, so this gentleman that's about to testify, he took pictures of the crime scene, but the thing that he's really going to be testifying to are the clothing. And what's interesting, and I thought was really cool that he did, because I actually thought about doing this, and then I was like, I wonder how I would even do that. But the way that what he did is he took pictures of each piece of Ezra's clothing, and then he took that picture and he put it to the whatever those things are called that they put on they keep calling it the I don't know what they call it, but we called it an overhead when I was in school. And so he put and then they laid the images on top of each other, and I thought that was interesting. And then but then there's on the cross there's a bit of contention, not between like the two attorneys, but more the well, you'll see. It's very interesting. I thought it was very, very interesting. Oh, thank you, Vincent's missing ear. If anybody is listening now or later on in the future, please, that knows Ezra, please let her know that the Ward fam will be sending her mail. And I thought fondue looked wrong. I did too when I was growing up, Heather, or whatever. I thought they looked fun. But is that not right? I don't know what you guys are doing. I'm not highlighting. No more comments. You guys are all in trouble now. I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, it's just interesting. You guys should totally the way that they stack up the clothing. It's very fascinating. So, and it's a quick one too. It's only 22 minutes. Okay, here we go.
Could you tell us your name, please, and spell your first and last name for the court reporter?
My name is Aaron Matson, AARON, MATSON.
I just want you guys to know that every time I hear the name Aaron now from is it Keenan and Peele? Now I can't remember.
Evidence,
when they
preservation.
say all the names and they're calling out roll and they say Aaron. Now that's how every time I see the name Aaron, that's how I read it. Aaron. All right, hold on. We're just going to skip through this because this is not like, these are his pictures. He took pictures of the knife and we've seen that like 37 times. This is another angle of the knife. All right. Let me get to the part. Hold on. All right.
We start with 665, which is the t-shirt. And then if I overlay another one, I would be able to basically tell how things line up from there. Is that the, so what we're able to see is we're actually able to see through the items as you line them up. Is that, Mr. Mattson, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So this allows us to see through and kind of see how things line up. Correct?
Correct.
All right, thank you. And then with 666 and 667, we'd be able to do essentially the same thing, correct?
Correct.
All right, thank you.
He just did that so quick.
Yeah, Butch, get your-
You may.
Now I'm showing you another envelope. It appears to have on there, it says transparencies with markups. Can you tell us what that envelope contains?
Oh, I
These are
guess
the
they're
same
just
photographs
called
as the previous envelope,
transparencies.
however, they
Super
contain
fancy.
Areas circled of cuts or tears that I observed.
All right, it seems we start at, looks like exhibit 668 and go through 673. Can you tell us what we see there? Each one of those.
States exhibit 668, again, is item, crime lab item AN. It is that brown sweater, now with a circle or several circles on it. 669, crime lab item L, the long sleeve blue button-up shirt. Exhibit 670, crime lab item AL. Long sleeve blue shirt, button-up now with the markups.
Apologies, is there a distinction between 669 and 670? I can't see from here.
Yeah, I may have misspoke. 669 is crime lab item L, long sleeve, kind of a plaid pattern button-up shirt. Well, I can see a transparency
No
version.
objection to the admission.
It was like, oh, you're right. Hold on. Even though
Correct.
it was like that when I watched it before too. He just did
671,
like
crime
such a
lab
slow,
item AM.
quick job. All right, hold on. I'll put it back. I forgot. Thank you for pointing that out, Jackie. That was a fatal flaw in my plan. All right, hold on.
If I overlay another one, I
Hold on. Let me put it on normal. My bad. Hold on. Okay, that should be it.
this would, I can put these on and we start with 665, which is the
Can't believe I did that.
t-shirt. And then if I overlay another one, I would be able to basically tell how things line up from there. Is that the, so what we're able to see is we're actually able to see through the items as you line them up. Is that, Mr. Mattson, is that correct?
Correct.
He's talking to
Okay.
you, Mr. Madsen. Come on.
So this allows us to see through and kind of see how things line up. Correct?
Correct.
All right, thank you. And then with 666.
All right, now
and
we can speed it up.
667, we'd be able to do essentially the same thing, correct?
Correct.
All right.
Okay,
Thank you.
Allie, to answer your question, they are definitely leggings. They have it with the shoes.
Yeah, Butch, can you,
You may.
now I'm showing you another envelope. It appears to have on there, it says transparencies with markups.
I think that's what I
Can you
saw.
tell us what
All
that
right, hold on.
envelope contains?
These are the same photographs as the previous envelope. However, they contain areas circled of cuts or tears that I observed.
All right, it seems we start at, looks like exhibit 668 and go through 673. Can you tell us what we see there? Each one of those.
States exhibit 668, again, is item, crime lab item AN. It is that brown sweater, now with a circle or several circles on it. 669, crime lab item L, the long sleeve blue button-up shirt. Exhibit 670, crime lab item AL. Long sleeve blue shirt, button-up now with the markups.
Apologies, is there a distinction between 669 and 670? I can't see from here.
Yeah, I may have misspoke. 669 is crime lab item L, long sleeve, kind of a plaid pattern button-up shirt. Well, I can see a transparency
No
version.
objection to the admission or the publication. I just want, thank you. That's 669, sir?
Correct. 671, crime lab item AM, yellow t-shirt, now with the markup on it. 672, crime lab item M, long, blue jeans with markups. And exhibit 673, crime lab item AK, the leggings with markups.
And the markups are the areas where you observe defects in those items. Is that accurate?
Correct.
All right. So let's try to put these on and see what we can see with the markups. Start out-
Are you offering all these?
Yes, Your Honor, I moved the addition, the council already indicated
He
he
did.
didn't have any objections.
So exhibit 668 through 673 then will be received.
All right, I'm going to start with exhibit 671. This was the yellow shirt, correct?
Correct.
All right. And then if we go from there to 670, which would be the long sleeve button up shirt, and place that over the top. Now, are we able to then see the markup from the yellow shirt through to the, in relation to where the markups are on the blue shirt?
I am able to see it.
Okay. And can you, I can have the laser pointer.
I see one over here.
That would be it. There we go. Can you show us that on there?
From the yellow shirt,
Yes.
see a smaller circle in the center here.
Okay, great. Thank you. Now, if we go next, let's just, let's do it. I'm going to do it a couple ways. Let's start with, let's put the gold or brown sweater. I think it's been referred to as both over the top. What do we see now?
Um,
What exhibit number is that?
This would be 668, thank you.
A little hard to see from where I'm sitting, but there is a larger circle here over this bigger opening here, and then as well on the sleeve.
Gets the lights a little bit different. That helps a little. And then if we take the last one over the top, which was 669.
From where I'm sitting, I can see the two on the sleeve here. It's getting a little muddy in the middle.
All right.
It reminds me of the time that
668 and 669.
Joey and
So
Chandler
if
were
we put-
fighting over the chair,
Put 668 first
and
here.
Joey came in wearing every
over the
stitch
top
of
of the-
clothing that
Other two.
Chandler had.
What can you see here?
Like I mean, there's layers,
I
and then
can see
there's
the-
this.
I guess all the layers of the markups.
And if we add 668 over the top.
Again, I can see the center being circled as well as on the sleeve area, the left sleeve.
Okay, thank you. And now let's take a look at the markups on, it'd be 673 first. This would be the leggings.
Correct.
All right, and you've marked up the areas that you observed defects.
Yes.
All right, and if we put the blue jeans over those leggings, what are we seeing now?
I see the three additional areas I had circled.
Great.
Sorry, what was the blue jeans number?
Maybe
What's that?
they were
That's
tights.
673.
Now I'm thinking they were tights, and those aren't shoes. I don't know. It's weird looking.
I don't have any other questions for Mr. Mattson. Thank you.
All right, any cross-examination?
Yes, sir, thank you.
Go ahead.
Mr. Mattson, you prepared a report on March 19th of 2019, did you not?
Without referring to my notes, I'm not 100% sure, but
Give me a second.
I'll have a look at it and agree.
Showing you what's been marked as exhibit 670.
I actually think Heather, whatever, that she intended to
Does
ditch.
this appear to
the
be
clothing.
your report from March 19th,
Yes, it is.
2019?
Yes.
And your agency has it report number 16, is that right?
Yes.
And then that's your title and signature, on it, correct?
Correct.
And that,
No,
yes,
she
you familiar
didn't,
with this
Vincent.
report?
So they're probably
Do you
tights. I don't
have
know
your
why
own
they're
copy?
calling
You
them
wanna follow
leggings,
along?
because those are not
Am I allowed to
leggings.
refer to my notes?
Well, to refresh your recollection, but if Mr. Nelson, you have no objection, the state has no objection, you may.
No, I don't.
Okay, then you can do that.
Thank you.
That's the March 19th, 2019 report, council. Just again, so that I'm,
Number 16.
Okay, yeah, that's what I just wanted to be sure.
You have that in front of you, sir?
I do.
This, again, you prepared this report back in March of this year, right?
Correct.
In that report, you'd done some similar work to what we just seen here, in which you were labeling the 6 items of clothing that you just discussed: the t-shirt, blue button-up,
Hold on, I'm going to
flannel,
answer.
sweater,
You can say,
jeans.
okay, so Ezra's contention is that Alex inflicted those wounds on her. Those wounds are match the wounds in that vicinity. She had some cuts, but they were superficial cuts. I mean, they bled, right? But they were very superficial. They didn't even need a stitch. So that's what she did. She caused those holes.
Leggings, right?
Correct.
They're
You
tights.
were, in that
So
assignment,
ridiculous.
asked to again put these circles on them and put them in a certain order. Is that right?
That is correct.
And initially, in deciding that order, you had consulted with, as you put in here, District Attorney Richard DeFore. Is that right? On page 7 of 11 of your report?
The prosecution says that she did all of that. Every
Sorry,
bit
what
of
page
the
are you referring
cuts
to?
Sure.
and
On page
holes, etc., were
3964 of mine,
self-inflicted
which is
by
page
Ezra,
7 of 11.
obviously,
Oh, those are my notes.
through her clothing. Yes.
Correct. Yes.
You've made some reference to, in preparing these exhibits of the layering of clothing, you were to send to Mr. DeFore for
She
feedback
did,
and
Aussie
information
girl
on the
Jen.
preferred
She did.
layered order of the clothing. Is that right?
That is correct.
When you prepared that back in March, the information that you were provided, you put the layers down, correct?
Correct.
The transparencies that you brought today, those are new, those are fresh, right?
Fresh shit. They're new. Yes.
You just did those in the past week.
Correct.
Prior to preparing these, so it was after the trial started where you did these transparencies, right?
She
Yes.
sure did anaphylaxis.
Prior
She
to
did.
that, you had it in a particular order in a PDF format. Is that right?
That is correct.
And in that particular order, you had the first layer being the T-shirt. Is that right?
Yes.
I think I'm just gonna use some of these other exhibits rather than transparencies, but the first order that you'd had showing you exhibit 639 was this T-shirt, is that right?
That's correct.
And then the second layer that you had prepared was exhibit 640, this blue button-up shirt, correct?
Yes.
And then the third layer that you had back in March of 2019, you had as the item, was it L, the blue, what I'm calling the blue and white plaid flannel shirt?
Yes.
And then you had back in your report, the order that you'd put down was the sweater as the outer layer. Is that right?
That is correct.
And now since that report, you've prepared these transparencies, right?
The transparencies are, yes, the material themselves were freshly printed, the files and all that, and nothing new. It's these exact same images printed out in a tangible form.
Correct. You didn't prepare them in a transparency manner prior to that, correct?
That is correct.
Prior to preparing these, the order that you always had them in was the order that I just presented them in, correct?
Correct.
And now it's just recently where you prepared it so that they could be presented in multiple different orders, correct?
Correct.
And that was after the trial had started, right?
Correct.
That's all. Any redirect?
None, Your Honor.
All right, then Mr. Mattson, you may.
Okay. So that's all I have for tonight. But Aussie girl Jen, excuse me, I didn't mean to cough in you guys' ear. It just kind of snuck up on me. I think that the theory is that she ambushed him in such a way that he could not, that the immediate wound was so stunning to him, and almost, I mean, obviously he didn't pass away instantly, but that the initial wound was so severe, that's the word I should say, so severe that it kept him from really being able to defend himself, although he does have some defensive wounds. So, I didn't play at him, Mo. I just talked about him. Did you see that there are indeed? Let me show you now while you're paying attention, because this is important to me. There are indeed lemon flavored Jolly Ranchers. And to answer for you, to you, Anaphylaxis, they don't know exactly what order the wound came in, but the medical examiner, see how petty I am, you guys? But he had a wound to his neck that hit the jugular. He had I think that they think that the wounds that occurred on the lower portion of his body were the latter ones, but he had, right, anaphylaxis. I mean, she just was guessing, but I think that the fact that she isn't, for lack of a better word, I mean, it doesn't look like she was in a fight, because even when they describe her injuries, right, and this is the who talked about those? The Sane Examiner talked about them. The emergency room physician spoke about them. The female officer who came and photographed her injuries spoke about them. And they were all superficial and self-inflicted. And how they determined that the word boy that was written on her arm was self-inflicted and she admitted it later, but it was by the way that the lettering was and the way that the wound was facing. It was as if she turned her arm upside down and wrote the word with her other hand. That's the way it appears, right? It would be such an awkward angle, based on where she says she was in the front seat and where he was in the front seat. It doesn't make logical sense. And then when they spoke about, and they didn't show the photographs of the injuries to her thighs and like her genital area, the doctor said that it appeared that the way the wounds, the direction of the wounds appeared to be in an upward motion, and looked self-inflicted. So that's, I just think it's interesting that this is a thing that's been brought up a couple of times. So the testimony that Mo is referring to, the Sergeant Rick, I can't remember what his last name, Rick May, I think is what it is, Mays, or something like that. I know it's Rick, but because it's getting late and your host here is getting tired. But anyway, when he was having him display the clothing items, well, what he was doing is he had another officer hold the clothing items, and then the sergeant was pointing out the defects. He made a big deal about the size of the shirts. And if you'll notice in the end, when he put the transparencies on the, and showed him, he has it where the gold, brown, whatever color that is, sweater is the outer layer. And I think that I don't understand what his point is. I don't understand what the order of the two shirts, what difference that makes. Because whether you put the shirt on top or you put the sweater on top, the holes line up on the other layers as well. And I just I think that I'm going to wait to see obviously when the defense puts their case on what his point is to all of this, because at this point, to me, it's not looking good for Ezra. He's really failed to tie all of this together in some meaningful and cohesive way for me. I just can't. I don't have any reasonable doubt he's not raised one iota of reasonable doubt. But anyway, what she wrote, Jackie, was boy, but if you look at it, it looks like the word box. It's terrible. She has terrible penmanship. Just terrible. You know me so well, Mo. I was very impressed by his folding skills. And he was very careful. He had wore two pairs of gloves, the safety glasses, the whole nine. It was great. So I'm very curious as to how he's going to connect all of this together. So tomorrow night, we're going to do two things. First of all, we're going to start with the two friends of Alex's to testify, because their testimony, I think, is important, and it's Friday night, so we can go a little later. And then we will go over night one of Ezra Palooza. So I just want to thank everybody for being here. Thank you all so much. Thank you all for the super chats. You guys were great in chat. This is just the best chat ever. Welcome new members. Welcome, Jackie. And so I will see you guys tomorrow night at 9. All right. Y'all take care and have a good Friday, and I will see you tomorrow night. Okay, bye.